it became popular all of a sudden. The Heavenly Demon Chronicle limits participation to 2 to 4 people. However, Jin Konzi stepped forward immediately, and the Sword Saint followed suit. They began explaining the background of the apocalypse to everyone. Everyone, pay attention to the last sentence of Revelation. Konzi slowly stood up. As long as I can become as strong as he was, that's enough. The time has come again for the Apocalypse selection. Jin Konzi directly chose the Heavenly Demon Chronicle. This is an event set in the martial arts world. The librarian also spoke. He directly asked why its previous master had sealed it. The Holy Sword recalled that its previous master was a silent, justice-filled warrior, but it didn't know why he abandoned the empire in the end. The Sword Emperor waved his hand. Stop thinking about it. Hunters are creatures that get crazier the higher their rank. Jin, I won't kill you, but I will break and seal you. Sorry, this is my only choice. Then both Jin Konzi and the Sword Emperor left the memory. Looking at the holy sword in his hand, the guardian silently prays to the goddess. But Jin reaches out and grabs the goddess. Caught off guard, the goddess shatters from the blow. Along the way, you've helped me a lot. That means the Emperor Akin is also a hunter. Jandy replied, it should be so. Watching the conversation between the goddess and Akin, the constellation does not belong to the constellations. It belongs to us humans. He's a lunatic who specifically seeks out constellations and destroys them. That's how he got his name. The tower and every world are interconnected. Starting from the 5th level, you will need to compete with hunters from other worlds. She can't absorb the skill. Then the Sword Emperor and Jin Konzi entered the goddess's memory. Jin Konzi and the Sword Emperor stood side by side, looking at the silver-haired youth on the throne. The Sword Emperor said this guy's nickname seems to be Tianqing the Slayer. Thinking of this, Jin Konzi directly drew the holy sword. He aimed it directly at his own neck and stabbed down. You are dead. Skill usage conditions have been met, but because the guardian goddess is sealed, it was only then that Jin Konzi learned the second sister sword was in another world. He went to the restroom to prepare for suicide. He wanted to understand what kind of person the master of the holy sword was, because another sword exists in the martial arts world. This represents that the Emperor Jin possesses the ability to transcend worlds. She was once the guardian goddess of the Aegean Empire, but because of a single remark from him, he angered her master, the Emperor of Aegean. She was sealed and split into 5 sacred swords, and all of this is recorded in the Sacred Swords memoirs. However, just as the discussion was heating up, Jin Konzi's holy sword began to glow. Its sister sword was nearby. Jin Konzi looks toward the approaching Sword Saint. The aura of the sister sword emanates from the Sword Saint's hand. Let me tell you something. Then, the dark sorceress leaned in close to Jin Hong's ear and started speaking. After some time, each group began introducing their recommended works. Fairy Tale Group, our scapegoat. Martial Arts Group, The Chronicle of the Demon. He directly took the golden-haired lowly to the fairy tale area. Thus, Jin Konzi began sorting everyone into the appropriate groups. At that moment, the Black Witch viewer said that these revelations all cut off at the climax of the plot. It's difficult to explain the specific plot during the live broadcast. Can you move a little closer? Yeah, if you were in another group, I'd find it very strange. Well, in that case, I'll give the romance group a try then. At this moment, Jin Konzi looked towards the judge at the side. The character tried to start directly. Jin Konzi felt helpless. Could it be that he's afraid of others knowing he likes romance books? At this moment, Jin Konzi nervously said to the Dark Witch, I thought you were a romantic person. I'm surprised you're not in the romance section. I'm a bit surprised. Really? Do I seem like someone who fits in the romance genre? So this time he had to think comprehensively. As he fervently watched the story unfold, he suddenly saw the dark sorceress actually in the reasoning area. At this moment, Jin Konzi was very puzzled. Didn't the character window just say he likes romance? By the way, once, when the Flame Emperor challenged to the 29th floor, the previous world was all volcanoes and lava zones. Because he was sensitive to fire, he did not consider the needs of the people inside the tower. The world was ravaged by nuclear war. Only Adam and Eve were left. But one day, while they were on a date in a volcanic area, the volcano suddenly erupted, and humanity went extinct. For example, Solomon's Warm College. The story tells of a college romance between 2 people, but due to the appearance of a demon, and that's how the world ended. Also, volcano survival story. Those who can't read will sit on the right. Then those who can read will group according to their preferences. Now let's start reading seriously. Soon everyone began to read with great enthusiasm. One story after another was discovered. They won't devour you like before, so everyone understands. We can't all gather together to read them all at once. We need to split into groups. Those who can read, go to the left. The crowd watched as Jin Jean Konzi opened the book, and nothing terrifying happened. Everyone was stunned. The librarian also spoke up before the abilities of this work were demonstrated. These are all ordinary books. Then we can be self-sufficient. This way, we won't need the power of the external world. We can solve the food problem ourselves. Immediately, Jean Konzi picked up a book and opened it to read. The rewards will definitely vary somewhat. If you save a world filled with diamonds, then this world will become our level 22. Of course, diamonds are just an example. But if we change to a world rich in food, water, and various resources, no one responded. The library director, Jean Confucius, stood up at this moment. Everyone, please take a look at the task pop-up. The most important part is the last sentence. According to the world you have saved and cut ties with you. At this moment, the curator addressed the crowd again, asking if everyone had made up their minds. Who wants to be the main character? But everyone had just witnessed the curator's actions. Many people huddled in the corners, trembling in fear. Kim Gonja's face turned grim. He didn't expect this big, burly guy to have a special Oedipus complex. The Sword Emperor immediately sensed something was off. He threatened Jean Konzi, saying, if you dare to tell anyone, I'll kill you. Wouldn't this instantly win the beauty? Kim Gonja faced the Sword Emperor's mockery and directly opened the Sword Emperor's character profile. Favorability, 3 stars. Favorite character, Mom. Jean Konzi was completely stunned. Even the Emperor burst out laughing when he saw the character panel. This cold and elegant which actually likes a Prince Charming. Jean Konzi, go get yourself a white horse. You'll surely capture the goddess's heart in no time. He received the blessing of the goddess of beauty. He got a super cheat. That scene above happened when his confidence was through the roof. However, he looked at the Black Witch, who was deep in thought. Combined with his current state of mind and his preferences, a pink system task panel instantly appeared. It clearly showed that her affection level for him had reached 4.5 stars. So as long as it reaches 5 stars, they can become a couple. It also displayed all of the Dark Witch's preferences. However, all of this was due to the reward just obtained by Jean Konzi. As soon as he opened it, it instantly devoured those who were teasing him. Then he closed the book with a snap. Now, you all should think carefully about how to choose to save the world. This man has the ability to see through your hearts, but he used his positive energy to look at the goddess he had admired for a long time. Everyone outside the tower is watching. You can't do anything that would damage your image, but the curator doesn't care about that. He looked at those reckless hunters with a sly gaze. He pulled out a book directly. A clown jumped out to provoke him. The dark sorceress was looking at these idiots and was about to step forward to stop them, but she was suddenly stopped by Jean Konzi. This is all because they are currently being broadcast live. After saying that, he summoned 30 paper-thin lowly characters to serve everyone. Then, he announced the rules that need attention. First rule. Books without permission from this seat are absolutely forbidden to be touched. But before the curator could finish speaking, I want to continue observing these dying worlds. Please, go personally to stop the destruction of these 8 worlds. The random tower mission panel also appears in front of everyone. The mission difficulty and target are undetermined. Bring the hope of life to the dying worlds. What a tragic world. Everything ended prematurely for all sorts of improper reasons. Of course, if that's hard to understand, you can simply call it destruction. Now, please choose 8 books from these interrupted apocalypses as worlds to be saved. Some revelations have to face interruptions in serialization. There is more than one such world. There are countless worlds just like this. The reason this apocalypse was cut short is because of me. So, what caused another one to be cut short? This is the world you have already conquered. And this is your original world. These books are referred to by many names, but I prefer to call them revelations. However, not every revelation can be serialized smoothly. You will definitely pass the challenges smoothly. Now it's time to issue the tasks. First, I want to inform everyone that the books collected here are not ordinary books. This is a vast library that records countless worlds. Are we really the only ones attacking the tower? The curator said. Everyone, don't worry. With just the 3 of you, you can protect the Egyptian Empire. There are nearly 300 people now. Those who can come here are the hunters granted titles by the Great Tower. A total of 302 hunters. But considering the 50 people I just devoured, there are now 252 of you left. The Dark Witch is astonished. Everyone, please don't be afraid. I just want to warmly welcome you all. All the books in my collection are quite special. For example, recording your histories, as well as the history of the world you belong to. He picked up a pitch-black book and directly sucked in the 50 attackers. He then said to the remaining hunters, "Welcome to the Great Circular Museum of all things." The dark sorceress immediately asked, "Who exactly are you?" "I am merely the curator of this rather large library." He then stepped directly in front of Jean Confucius and said, so you must be the Lord of Death. Welcome to the Great Circle Museum of All Sounds. This is a world composed entirely of books. However, the collections here are all treasures, and each book is its own independent world. But the librarian here does not follow the way of honor. The rain god descends upon the sky once again. The commentary is complete. Everyone was directly transported to the 21st floor. To Confucius's surprise, upon landing, a child dressed entirely in white appeared before them. Fame or money? Or a lover? I can satisfy you with all of them. At this moment, the countdown in the sky has only 5 seconds left. Countdown ends. Thanks, everyone, for coming. Afterward, the two of them left the stage together. Then, the Dark Witch grabbed both of Jean Konzi's hands. You did really well today. If you want anything, just tell me directly. Someone raised their hand and asked about the relationship between the Black Dragon Lord and the Lord of Death. The Dark Witch smiled wickedly. Good question. Our relationship? It's more than just friendship. Let's wrap it up here for today. These are the names of those who sacrificed themselves in past strategies. But today, no one's name will be added here. And now, there are only 5 minutes left until the 21st floor of the giant tower opens. The Dark Witch was about to wrap up the press conference, but just then, Confucius and the Dark Witch are sitting on stage. After the classic opening remarks, the Dark Witch begins to get into the main topic. This time, we achieved a zero-casualty strategy. Please take a look. Every stone at your feet has a name engraved on it. The holy sword shines instantly, right? The great sage asserts that he is not useless, and Confucius is quite speechless. I've seen enough of this already. At this point, the press conference time has arrived. He can regain the glory of his prime. Jean Konzi then asked, do you know the whereabouts of the other 4 swords? The goddess guarding them used the right to obliterate them. So, without the 5 swords, you're just a useless fool, and sealed them separately. He is the first of the holy swords. The sword saint statue has 4 other swords. They are mercy, prayer, sacrifice, and salvation. If all 5 sister swords are gathered. Wait a minute, could it be that the will of the guardian goddess is the spirit of this sword? The guardian goddess confirmed it. He was once a constellation in the tower. He was revered as a holy spirit like a god. But the empire split him into 5 swords. At this moment, the goddess appeared to express her recognition of Jean Konzi. Jean Konzi looked at the sword cauldron goddess, wondering why she suddenly responded to him. The guardian goddess allows you to summon him. Goddess, please look down. Jean Konzi suddenly looked at the sword in his left hand. Thank you for accommodating this old man's stubbornness. After speaking, the sword saint turned and left. In the next moment, Jean Konzi collapsed to the ground. Finally succeeded. And I never will. Hearing Kim Confucius's response, the master swordsman decisively shattered his own memory. From now on, I will trust only what I see with my own eyes. So, these past 5 days, you've worked hard. Have you ever taken the life of an innocent being? At this moment, the tower also provides insight, urging Kim Kanja to speak the truth. I've never done anything like that, Master Swordsman. That's why I came to the tower, to prove myself. But this confidence has slowly become my stumbling block. I'm relying too much on skills now. I should trust my own eyes and hands. Now let me ask you, you really don't need to make me understand in this way. Those who rank near the top within the Great Tower have all been deeply hurt by the outside world. Yet my life is quite miserable. I feel like a flower in a greenhouse. But I don't want to accept it this way. I've killed countless people, right? But when you look in the mirror, you'll also see a killer who's taken countless lives. But you wouldn't think of yourself as guilty. So, Mr. Sword Saint, I'm actually on the same path as you now. So, the two of them activated their escape skill right away. Before leaving, the Dark Witch reminded them about tomorrow's press conference. Remember to respond. At the same time, Jean and Confucius arrived at a deserted rooftop. He was the first to speak, asking, in the Sword Master's eyes, those kids just wanted to show the outside world that we were also doing very well, out of a sense of inferiority. Although they left everything behind to come to the tower, there is still a hint of resentment in their hearts. Let's go. Staying another day would be a waste. Not caring at all about Jean Konzi's complaints. At this moment, Jean Konzi became even angrier. The Sword Saint then spoke and said to give up. When I reached the top of the rankings, something exactly like this happened. It's because you all keep caring about these meaningless things. That's why you can't break through the 10th level. Everyone turned to look at Jean Konzi. But in the next moment, they went back to chatting like before. At this moment, Jean Konzi helplessly posed for the photographer, while the guild leaders nearby were chatting leisurely. Dee was laughing so hard she was rolling back and forth. Jean Konzi finally couldn't hold it in anymore. With a snap, he threw off his coat. To all the eager family members, the comic is called Time Hunter. Let's show some support for the author. This beautiful girl just acted a little spoiled, and let the tower's top warrior be at her mercy. The Dark Witch stared at Jean Konzi with a dreamy gaze. She softly said, I beg you. Just for today, I'm counting on you. The world wants to know who you really are. In an instant, he runs to Confucius. He starts gossiping. Jean Konzi was terrified by the question. He then pulled the Dark Witch and said, "Didn't you tell me to maintain a mysterious persona? Why did it turn out like this?" Then the sharp-tongued one feels embarrassed. You really are too sorry to look at. The Sword Saint is lost in his own sword. So now only the Lord of Death is suitable. One end of the judicator stands up. The 5 presidents were waiting for him there. At this moment, the Dark Witch spoke first. "I want to establish Jean Konzi as the hero representing our tower. The Count loves talent too much, and the Chief Justice has killed too many. As for the Paladin, he doesn't want to attract attention." The Dark Witch was nearby, instructing him not to say anything. Maintain a mysterious persona. Jean Konzi can learn it easily. Silently walk among the crowd. Soon, they arrived at the tavern from before. Numerous reporters rushed in front of him. They asked all sorts of questions. He had imagined this scene countless times in the past. Now that he was truly facing it, he felt a bit at a loss. After that, everyone was transported to the first level's world. The Dark Witch also opened the portal. Jean Konzi froze the moment he saw what was outside the door. Countless reporters and cameras were directed at him, bombarding him with questions. He followed the Dark Witch through the center of the crowd. "I prefer real estate land." Just as everyone was about to leave, the Dark Witch glanced at Ingli, who had tears of humiliation streaming down her face. "What's going on with this person?" "Lord Black Dragon, just pretend you didn't see anything. Of course, I hope to own the land on the 20th floor, but I won't ask for the 11th to 19th floors. Through rewards, and the profits from trade should also be shared with other hunters. Compared to money, I am now an official of the first emperor, and also a messenger of the goddess." Hearing this, the Dark Witch unexpectedly looked at Jean Konzi. "So borrowing your name, shouldn't it be free? Thanks to you, we can finally trade inside the tower now. No more bowing down to those old fools from the outside world. Those bastards always threaten us with food. I'll lend you my title for trading." Jean Konzi glanced at the demon beside him. "For now, let's handle some matters on the 20th floor. As for the guild leader thing, we can talk about it in the residential area." The Dark Sorceress laughs happily. "You have now simultaneously joined 5 major guilds. This also means you don't belong to any guild, so you should have a guild leader title by now. Of course, if you want to be a lone wolf like the Swordmaster, that's fine too." She held up a newspaper from the tower and showed it to Jean Konzi. The hunter leaderboard was prominently displayed on it, and the Lord of Death was ranked 3rd. Jean Konzi looked at the newspaper in surprise. "So now you need to think about your future path." Jean Konzi blushed as he looked at the girl in front of him. Such a cute girl. Is she an angel? If not an angel, that must be the goddess. At this moment, the Dark Witch also jumped down from Jean Konzi. Now, he's completely conquered by an S-rank hunter. She even flirted with the innocent Jean Konzi, saying, "Kid, you're really amazing. What kind of reward do you want? Your big sis can satisfy anything. Kid, you're really impressive. Tell your big sis, what kind of reward do you want? Big sis can give you anything you want." The once cold and ruthless Black Witch, and the countdown begins again. The Dark Witch also ascends as planned, throws herself directly into Kim Konzi's arms. "Kid, you actually made it through 20 floors in just 5 days. Look, everyone's talking about you now, or remains harmonious and prosperous like now. It's just an outcome. This current ending is my choice. Now, fireworks are going off at the tower." The rewards for clearing the level began to be calculated. Seeing this, he laughed heartily. "You little rascal passed the Demon King level just with your mouth." Confucius remained silent. The demon beside him actually didn't care about the outcome, whether the village is devoured. Everyone knelt down together. "We will follow the orders of Lord Confucius." At this moment, the giant tower's alert sounded. The sky began to return to a deep blue. "So, with this, will you still worry about the witch doing evil?" The paladin holds his sword with one hand. "May I ask your name, esteemed messenger?" "My name is Confucius." In the next moment, he explained to the crowd that this person is also a cruel demon, but he has been completely subdued and controlled by me. After saying this, he snapped his fingers. The Flame Emperor suddenly started dancing right there. These enchanting dance steps are completely indescribable. The Emperor of Fire appears. He directly grabs the collar of the Golden Boy and says, "You take care of this. What do I have against you? Why do you want to make me like this?" Yet, Confucius ignored the harshness of this mortal. "Have you locked these demons in a safe place?" Jean Konzi summoned another skeleton. The paladin looked on in panic. The skeleton instantly began to recover. In the next moment, "She asked me to eliminate the evils of this world. My mission is to send the demons to hell. This is my mission." After saying this, he directly eliminated all the skeletons. The paladin hurriedly asked the messenger, "I have already cleaned up all the evils." After saying this, Master Jean directly initiated the summoning of the 100 demons. Countless skeleton armies appeared before the troops. "These people are all the tasks I have completed. The goddess has given me orders. Confucius robe. At this moment, the emperor spoke again. The highest form of boasting is made up of 90% truth and 10% lies. Confucius looked at the speaking paladin. Be careful with your words. Executing divine punishment is my decision. Why is he blocking our path? Has everyone forgotten? We must burn that place down. The demon heard this and quietly tugged on Jin's sleeve, saying, I am actually the messenger of the goddess. At this moment, the empire's ruler started discussing again, and the yells also felt very confused. At this moment, a general stepped forward. Even if he is the embodiment of light, it then swiftly dripped onto the earlier pearl. The once bright pearl quickly turned pitch black. The lizard man was astonished again. His level of darkness has reached that of a demon king. Meanwhile, Jin Kongzi's face was indifferent. The lizard man looked at Jin Kongzi with tears streaming down his face. He must be an official of the first emperor. No. He's actually a messenger of the goddess. Then he quickly grabbed the ghost's arm. A drop of fresh blood slipped directly from his palm. This left the lizard person who proposed the test utterly shocked. Everyone was almost blinded by this dazzling light. What kind of soul is this? How many lives has it saved? This is truly the embodiment of light. Are you willing to take the test? This soul orb glowing red. As long as you drop a person's blood, you can see the goodness and evil of the soul. However, after the male protagonist dripped his blood for the test, it emitted a radiant light. Then what the boy said will be true. So how do you plan to confirm it? The lizard man took out a blue orb. Just drop some blood on it, and you'll know if it's a good deed. A lizard man shouted and stepped out of the crowd. The situation is actually quite simple now. Is this boy an official of the first emperor? Is that woman the real witch? We just need to confirm these two things. Look, as you can see, the witch has been defeated by me. General Bas and the Imperial Army were instantly shocked. Is this even possible? Just when the Imperial Army hesitated, push-ups and planks. Non-stop sitting until the demon collapses on the ground, no longer able to support his weak body, but he still did as his master requested. Next, Confucius got playful. He made the demon do various exercise movements, 20 jumping jacks, 10 squats. He still bowed to the Imperial Army, but that's not all. Then Confucius had him push off the ground with his feet and do a somersault forward. The kneeling demon looked confused. Jin Kongzi then gestured to the demon, ordering him to kneel before the army. Lower your head. Forehead touching the ground. The demon trembled all over. But why would you come to such a small place, my lord? Jin Kongzi confidently proclaimed to the imperial lords. The witch has already been defeated by me. He said this while pointing directly behind him. Everyone's gaze instantly shifted to the blonde beauty kneeling on the ground. Jin Kongzi silently watched the kneeling soldier. The nobles and elves beside him were also very surprised. They didn't expect there to be officials from the first emperor here. General Base asked his doubts at this time. We are here to hunt down the witch. Couldn't help but sigh. I didn't expect you to be so good at it. However, let me remind you of something. The most important thing when boasting is confidence. If you want the other person to fall for it, you must first deceive yourself. May the great Jin Empire shine forever. The other team members saw this and all knelt on one knee to pay respects to the first emperor's officials. The despicable emperor nearby, seeing Confucius boast so wildly, he was ready to persuade them not to attack here. He then drew the holy sword. A brilliant light instantly blinded everyone's eyes. Jin Kongzi shouted, I am a high-ranking minister of the imperial royal family. General Base instantly knelt on one knee until he is exhausted and unable to move, collapsing on the ground. It turns out that after Confucius summoned the evil spirits again, the imperial army was preparing to attack his homeland. At this moment, Jin Kongzi stood before the army. They still personally handled these imperial generals. The once invincible Autumn Rain Demon King now sits on the ground like a docile girl. Moreover, he listens to Confucius' words obediently. He does whatever he is told to do. How dare you block the way? Jin Kongzi looked at the familiar faces before him. They were all imperial soldiers he had rescued from the previous floor. So how would Jin Kongzi choose next? Would he truly block everything for the beauty? I will protect you. At this moment, Jin Kongzi stopped in front of the army. General Base saw the person in front of him. He instantly roared, how dare you? Where did this madman come from? Upon learning this, Jin Di suddenly realized that's how it was. Jin Kongzi readily agreed. Since you are my servant, it can't be like this at this moment. Outside the village, the imperial army has arrived. The demon falls to the ground, lifeless. He pleads desperately with Confucius, saying it doesn't matter what he wants from him. Please, save my paradise. Blue light scattered. History history is changing once again. The demon looks at his former village. He covers his face with his hands. He murmurs softly, begging, "I will obey your orders." But at this moment, Jiandi was puzzled. Why is the once invincible Demon King now so submissive? Listen, and you'll soon understand why. At this moment, the giant tower also sounded a prompt. The second emperor had never discovered the Demon King. "From today on, you shall be called Evil Spirit. Your previous name can no longer be used." The evil spirit slightly lowered its head. "Yes, master." In the next moment, he pointed directly at Esther. With a single strike, he ended him. But in the next instant, Jin Konzi used the 100 demons summoning to revive him once again. He looked at the newly created being before him, and Jin Confucius slowly returned to reality. At this moment, Jen D pointed at the dazed Jin Confucius and asked, "What are you daydreaming about? I asked you if the giant tower's skills can be used." Jin Confucius looked blankly at his own body. He thought of the scene he had just seen. He grasped the holy sword at his waist. Jin Confucius also thought of something at this moment. Then he expressed his opinion. At this moment, the creator of the giant tower said, "Your idea sounds good. I agree with your idea." So the last vote was cast. The other 3 pillars have also cast their votes. At this moment, there are 2 opposing votes, 2 in favor. 1 person abstained. Now, only 1 person is still thinking. A vote was initiated. The spirit of Confucius fell into darkness in an instant. The 6 pillars began voting. The 6th pillar opposed the ancient war. The 5th pillar, Mirage City, agrees. Jin Konzi feared the skill might fail, so he posed his question to the tower. But the tower did not have the authority to answer him. Thus, the Council of 6 Pillars convened directly. They began discussing whether the Summon 100 Demons skill could affect NPCs, but it directly alerted the 6 creator gods of the Great Tower. It turns out that after defeating the Demon King Shoyu, Jin Konzi wanted to kill Est, then summon him again through a skill. But because he was reviving an NPC, and directly asked the Great Tower if they could use a skill to summon Esther, the Great Tower responded that the question was beyond its authority. Then, the Great Tower further indicated that the question had been escalated to an official issue. He's applying for a meeting vote with the 6 pillars of Hallow Saints. This man just asked the simplest question. Looking at Esther kneeling on the ground, he was about to strike the final blow. But Jiandi suddenly said, "What if killing the NPC prevents us from summoning?" Jin Konzi glanced at Esther, who was slumped on the ground. Esther suddenly launched a final counterattack, but this strike had no effect. He charged at King Konzi again. But in the next instant, King Konzi swiftly sliced through his greatsword with a single slash. The enemy retains memories from life after being summoned. He plans to use Esther's medical method to kill him after, and once again created, so that he would treat Esther fairly. However, just as King Konzi was about to activate his skill, and now you have to face the consequences of all this, Jin Konzi turns and summons a skill, preparing to use the skill gained on the 19th level, Upgraded Ghost Summoning. This skill can result in self-death. "I would never have done it," Jin Confucius retorted. "What's the difference between how the Empire treated you and how you treated the girl? What's done cannot be undone. There's no point in being conflicted any longer. It wasn't like that. I didn't know at all at that time. When I devoured the girl, I had no human memories, nor any knowledge. If I had known, and the baby, too. They trusted you so much, but you devoured that child, and smugly thought you had saved someone." At this moment, Esther loudly retorted, "I will not sympathize with you. You think you saved the villagers, but what did you really do? That poor girl was ruthlessly devoured by you. The father lost his real daughter." Esther looks at Jin in horror. Jin Konzi shouts at him not to come closer. "You humans are all cruel and heartless creatures." Jin Konzi slowly walks toward him, carrying a sword. "Even though I know about your past experiences, the black mud on the Demon King's body completely disappeared." The giant tower also revoked Autumn Rain Demon King's title, but he still wanted to cling to the vanishing power. However, it was already too late. Jin Konzi gazed at the blonde beauty in front of him. She swings her giant sword wildly without any strategy, but to Confucius Jin, it feels like fighting a child. With just a light slash, he severely injured the Demon King. The Demon King's presence was gradually diminishing, until the final strike. Even though the Demon King has now become a weak woman, in order to protect her former life, she still chooses to fight to the death with Confucius Jin. One last battle. However, how could she possibly be a match for Confucius Jin now? The air was filled with the sounds of birds and flowers. Only a frail Demon King stood alone in the center. Jin Konzi raised the holy sword and pointed it at the Demon King, saying this must all come to an end. Accompanied by Esther's struggling cries, the ultimate copy officially begins at this moment. And so, he started thinking about seeking revenge against the nation. And now, the cycle of cause and effect. Jin Konzi came to save the empire tormented by the Demon King. He arrived at the 20th floor of the giant tower, and stood before the final Demon King, Xiuyu. At that moment, everyone's memories flooded into his mind. Unchanging pain and resentment filled his heart. Black tears began to flow from the corners of his eyes. Then, Esther slowly stood up. Black water began to spread outward from his feet. He numbly walked towards the bodies of the villagers. Even though they were burned beyond recognition, he could still recognize them. He grabbed handfuls of the villagers' ashes, trying to recreate them through this method. But clearly, it was too late. He once witnessed the annihilation of his homeland by humans. The Empire sought to completely eradicate what they deemed a terrorist organization. No elderly or children in the village were spared. They all met a tragic end at the hands of the Imperial soldiers. Poor Esther couldn't accept the reality before him. Only a weak demon lord stood alone in the center. Jinkonzi raised the holy sword and pointed at the demon lord, saying, "This must end." Accompanied by Esther's struggling cries, the ultimate dungeon officially began. The demon lord of curses had finally reached the end of his life. From here on, I wish to face the demon king alone and settle this. With that, Jinkonzi teleported away. As the teleportation concluded, Jinkonzi arrived at the 20th level. Here, the birds sang, and flowers bloomed. The demon king's presence started to diminish. His body also became smaller and smaller. In the end, the unwilling demon king retreated to the 20th floor. At this moment, Jinkonzi turned and bowed to the sword saint and witch in gratitude. "Thank you both for accompanying me this far." He slumped to the ground like a bashful maiden. Then, Jinkonzi drew the holy sword. Alone, he charged straight at the demon king. With just one strike, he split the demon king's body. He then began cutting the demon king's fragile body, stroke by stroke. And so the three of them fought their way through. Layer by layer, the giant towers were breached until they reached the 19th level. The demon king shrank to the size of an ordinary person. Now, he was weak and powerless. Then the group began to work together. Finally, the battle ended with the sword saint's stunning strike, and the demon lord retreated to the 14th level. As the demon lord withdrew, the world on the 13th level regained its vitality. After a cycle of rebirth, Golden Confucius told the Dark Witch not to shoot his eye. Upon hearing that, the Dark Witch looked melancholy. Such beautiful eyes, it would be a waste not to use them to attack. The Dark Witch was instantly intrigued upon hearing that. She immediately launched an attack at the giant's huge eye. But before they could celebrate, flames shot out directly from the giant's eye, burning them to ashes. While trying to figure out the secrets of the level, after dozens of cycles of death, most of the small minions had been dealt with. Now, only the Cyclops was left. Jinkonzi immediately commanded the Black Witch to attack the giant's eye. Meanwhile, Jinkonzi made a bet with the Sword Emperor on how many times he could die and still clear up to the 20th floor. The Sword Emperor looked at Jinkonzi, who was fighting valiantly below, and said, "I'll bet you die less than 100 times. Jinkonzi shamelessly said, "Then I'll make it less than 99 deaths." And just like on the 12th floor, Jinkonzi kept dying in battle. This changed the history of the Great Tower. They arrived at a time before the Demon King's attack on the Empire. As a result, the Demon King wasn't as hard to defeat as on the 12th floor. At this point, the Demon King summoned countless zombies to attack. The Sword Saint and the Dark Witch began to fight back. "You rule-breaking bastards. He just killed the Autumn Rain Demon King." In the blink of an eye, the Demon King revives again before the three. The Demon King, facing the three who just killed him, screams wildly. And all of this happened because Jinkonzi defeated the Demon King. So the Empire hasn't been affected by war. Surprised, Confucius directly draws the holy sword. He looks at the Demon King wielding the sword. His existence begins to change. The Demon King roars furiously, "Die, Confucius and the two of you." After seeing the map information, Jinkonzi excitedly looked at the two witches. It turns out they've returned to the time before the Demon King invaded the Empire. This also explains why the Demon King's power has weakened. It's because he hasn't yet committed mass slaughter. That means the Demon King is injured now. We can defeat him more easily. Just as Jinkonzi wonders why the Demon King has weakened, the Great Tower begins distributing maps as rewards from level 12, unlocking all terrain from levels 11 to 20. The Sword Saint and the Dark Sorceress immediately take battle stances. Jinkonzi also draws the holy sword. At this moment, Jian looks toward the Demon King in the distance, puzzled. He seems much weaker than before. Jinkonzi stares at the spy in shock. Then the witch spoke, "I knew that the stronger the hunter, the weirder they are." After the teasing, they held each other's hands tightly, ready to teleport. But when they teleported to the 13th floor, they were instantly shocked by the scene before them. The Demon King Xiuyu was actually standing right in front of them. Meanwhile, the servant girl was doubled over with laughter at Golden Boy. Then, Confucius turned. He reached out his hand towards the witch, preparing to teleport to the 13th floor together. But the witch looked at him with disdain. The tower also announced the rankings, but the name in first place was no longer called Golden Boy. Instead, it was the title bestowed by the tower, King of Death. General Base was also looking completely baffled. He suspected that this person's mind might be a bit off, and there have been no consequences. I have succeeded. I have a clear conscience. At this moment, the dark sorceress also turned to look at the golden boy. At that moment, then he shouted at General Base below, General Base, I have protected the empire for you. I have kept our promise. For hundreds of days, I have felt no guilt. Get down immediately. Jean Konzi stared blankly at the furious general below. He recalled how he had once pledged to protect the empire for the sake of the empire. Now, he had finally fulfilled that promise. Surprised, Konzi lowered his head and burst into laughter. The position that should have been invaded by the Demon King now no longer existed. Merchants on the street were enthusiastically peddling their goods, while the two quietly admired the empire's beautiful scenery. General Base shouted suddenly at them from below. Who are you? How dare you casually climb the city wall? The once gloomy and dilapidated castle, due to changes in history, instantly transformed into a bustling, prosperous street. It was as if the empire had never been invaded by the Demon King. The city guards who once defended the royal line were now relaxed and at ease. The Dark Witch watched everything intently. At this moment, they suddenly looked toward the city gate. It was completely different from how it looked before, so the two of them instantly teleported to the top of the wall. Together, they looked toward the inner city. The Dark Witch watched the falling stars and asked Kim Konzi what was happening. And Jean Confucius was also dumbfounded. He said he'd never encountered this before. The knowledgeable person behind him also said it was the first time seeing this, forcing the Demon Lord Autumn Rain Wolf to retreat. And with the Demon Lord's escape, the history of the tower was altered. A hidden quest appeared above Kim Konzi's head. Countless blue lights began raining down on the earth. Task name, Hero in a Stagnant World. The truth will soon be revealed. Next episode preview. Confucius clears floor 20. This black-haired beauty took him down with a single strike. At this time, the three looked at the empty rooftop, finally smiled. The giant tower sent a lot of notifications again. The tasks from floors 12 to 20 have changed. A hidden task appeared before Confucius. Jean Konzi was shocked by this sight. The Demon King's body began to slowly dissipate. In the next moment, the tower's notification came through. Xiaoyu Demon King chose to retreat to the 13th floor. She scattered all the black mirrors around the Demon King. Then all the black mirrors unleashed their energy, blowing the Demon King to bits. At this moment, the Demon King couldn't maintain his giant form. Slowly, a trace of a human face emerged. This strike pierced straight through the Demon King's body. The Demon King, gravely wounded, leaned on his giant sword. Seeing this, Konzi was shocked. He immediately ordered the witch to press the attack. The witch swiftly rushed in front of the Demon King. Dark energy surrounds the witch. It forms a pentagram array. A roar is heard. Dark wave of light. A powerful beam of black energy shoots out. The Sword Emperor mocked Jin Huan with a smug look. What can you do about me? Time returns to the battlefield once again. Jin Konzi directs the Dark Witch and Sword Saint to dodge the attacks. He also guides the Dark Witch to find the perfect moment to unleash her ultimate skill. In the blink of an eye, while the Sword Emperor was rambling, Jin Konzi got distracted, and as a result, he died again by accident. This caused Jin Konzi in the Death Realm to start cursing. This death would cost him another week of trouble, and charged toward the Demon King. A final power-charged slash. The Sword Emperor said, although it didn't hurt the Demon King, but that move was really cool. The cooldown for the 100 Ghost Summon has also ended. Jin summoned Confucius to use the 100 Ghost Summoning again. He immediately crouched down, gathering power. Suddenly, he leaped up, raised the holy sword. Each time, he relives the friendships and love on the battlefield. And once again, the Demon King uses the 100 Ghost Summon. It has been 3 days since Jin Konzi last used the 100 Ghost Summon. After experiencing yet another death, Jin Konzi begins to act recklessly in front of the Demon King. Jin Konzi dies once again. Time rewinds 24 hours. And with each death, Jin Konzi's abilities and memories are preserved. This way, he grows stronger with every battle. At this moment, Jin Konzi continues to fight the Demon King. The Dark Witch beside him gazes at the handsome Konzi, her eyes full of romantic feelings. The Dark Witch gives everyone a romantic benefit as well. But at this moment, the Demon King cuts through the stench of romance with a single strike. They killed all the innocent civilians. Witnessing these scenes, the Saintess was completely transformed into a devouring Demon King. However, the tragic experience of the Demon King did not deserve sympathy in the eyes of Confucius. His salvation was, in fact, the consumption and rebirth of another life. These actions went against human ethics. Thus, the Autumn Rain Demon King was officially born. He was once the Saintess who protected a city, but he was falsely accused of being a demon by the Imperial Army. So one deep night, The Imperial army cruelly destroyed his city. They cruelly killed all the innocent villagers. They didn't even spare the children. Seeing such brutal scenes of humanity, he vowed to spare no one from the empire. He would not stop until he had devoured them all. Because Esther's influence gradually grew, the goddess felt her authority was being challenged. Thus, the empire's soldiers believed Esther was a witch. The imperial army sought to eliminate these witch followers. They set fire to the village. Instead, he devoured the severely ill whole, then create another life. In this way, he constantly devoured life through this method, and then created life again. However, the good times didn't last long. Gradually, he slowly became the saintess. This was because he could cure any disease of anyone. But what people didn't know was, his healing was not simple treatment. At first, he was just a few animals, until one day, he devoured a little girl. He felt human emotions for the first time. He felt the warmth from his family. In my memory, the Demon King was not initially a complete being, but he had a special ability. As long as he devoured his opponent, he could fully replicate the life form of the one he swallowed. This included the other person's memories and emotions, and so on. But this time, he saw the Demon King's painful and tragic life. It turns out that the Demon King, who devours all living things, was once a revered saint, worshipped by thousands. Golden Confucius started fighting the Demon King again. But even so, he still couldn't hurt the Demon King at all. But he started recording the Demon King's every attack and habit. And so, he died once again. As for where I come from, it's none of your business. With that, Golden Confucius leapt towards the Demon King to attack. At this moment, the giant tower suddenly announced, "Congratulations, you have earned the title of Lord of Death. Salute the king who harvests death. Just a guy from the same world dares to stand up and block me." Jin Kongzi stands before the Demon King, holding the holy sword. "I am standing here now, has the right to stop you." The entire battlefield was instantly ravaged by the skeleton army. Countless monsters have been wiped out. The Sword Emperor nearby laughed heartily. The Demon King saw this scene and clenched his fists. The Dark Witch also joined the battle. After speaking, Golden Confucius raised the holy sword, ordering the skeleton army to attack. Countless skeletons charged at the Demon King's forces. The skeletons, fearless of death, attacked fiercely. Seeing this scene, the Autumn Rain Demon King twisted in fury. "How dare these ants possess a skill like mine? He absolutely cannot tolerate this happening." Then Golden Confucius said to the Sword Saint, "Please fight alongside the skeletons. With you, we definitely won't lose." These 4,000 skeleton warriors are all terrified themselves. At this moment, the entire battlefield is filled with the undead army. Even the Lich King can't help but call it impressive. The Dark Sorceress and the Scoundrel are left dumbfounded. This skill is just too overpowered for him. Just as the witch prepared to escape with him, he shouted to the sky to summon the 100 ghosts. Suddenly, over 4,000 skeleton warriors appeared around him. It turns out this skill counts even if I kill myself. In other words, it turns out that after Jin Kongzi was killed by the Demon King, he directly copied the skill of summoning the 100 ghosts. This skill can summon those I have killed to become skeletons. At this moment, the Demon King directly used the summon of 100 ghosts. The Demon King's army charged directly towards Jin Kongzi. Then this time, let's play a two-player game. In order to defeat the Demon King, the Blue Man directly summoned over 4,000 of himself to prepare to crush the Demon King's army. Then, Jin Kongzi continued to challenge the Demon King, but this time was different from all the others. Suddenly, an explosion echoed from the sky. The Dark Witch suddenly appeared by his side. Jin Kongzi looked at the suddenly appearing sorceress. "Since you are here with no casualties," he protected everyone's lives. At this moment, the witch tightly gripped his hand, covered in marks, and said with a grateful expression, "Thank you." Everyone survived. Even though he kept dying over and over, each time he restarted, he did better than the previous attempt. Until one time, they cleared the 11th floor. The Demon King was puzzled by this. Why was he still smiling so happily even when facing death? The Demon King was infuriated time and again. He swung the greatsword fiercely. Once again, he killed Golden Confucius. But during this time, the Sword Emperor kept teaching him swordsmanship. Slowly, fear began to spar with the Demon King, and he developed special feelings for the Demon King. Each time, the Demon King could see the smile on Jin Kongzi's face. Once, twice, 5 times, 100 times. Each time he died, he would draw a mark on his hand, and so, he kept starting over, then dying again. Jin Kongzi is omnipresent. He possesses the power of infinite resurrection and worship. However, Jin Kongzi underestimated the Demon King. Every time he fought the Demon King, he was killed in a single blow. So, he began recording the number of times he died, so that no one else would die miserably at your hands. This is the ending I wanted. The Demon King was furious upon hearing this. He transformed into a vicious black sludge and lunged at Jin Kongzi. Yet in this frozen world, or you'll die a terrible death. But Jin Kongzi remained unfazed. He drew out his great sword, pointing it at the Demon King. I will break the rules. I killed you myself. So Jin Kongzi immediately opened his minimap. They quickly found the Demon King's location. Then the Demon King finally couldn't hold back. His massive figure appeared directly in front of Jin Kongzi, and he threatened, make your choice immediately. The entire world had come to a standstill. Jin Kongzi analyzed that this might be the reason the Demon King kept urging us to choose a reward. It's because no one chose a reward, so the main quest hasn't been triggered. What will happen if we kill the Demon King next? The Duchess and the Serpent didn't say anything. Then Master Jin and the Sword Saint turned and walked out of the Great Hall. But just as he pushed open the door, the two were stunned by the scene before them. All the NPCs in the scenery had turned gray, constantly tempting Master Jin to choose a reward. During this time, the Paladin and the little Lolita also agreed to the request. After all, they had promised initially. She reminded the young man, don't be too confident. But Jin Kongzi was resolute. Please, everyone, believe me this once. At this moment, the Demon King also realized something was off in the plot. Jin Kongzi brought up the promise made by the former guild leader. He sincerely asked everyone to stay in the palace. Don't leave here for 5 days. He will clear all the levels by himself. The Dark Witch looked at the astonishingly bold Jin Kongzi, once the weakest F-rank hunter. Now, in front of all the top hunters, he claims he can clear to the 20th floor alone in 5 days. You have to know that it took the 5 major guilds years to reach the 10th floor. It turns out that after everyone returned to the 12th floor, I need all of you to stay inside the palace. Don't do anything, and don't ask. I will clear to the 20th floor within 5 days. Just wait here for my good news. Then everyone was transported to the palace on the 12th floor. Just as everyone was observing the surroundings, Jin Kongzi began to announce something he had planned for a long time. Do you remember what you promised me earlier? Starting now, Jin Kongzi has also grown and transformed. He no longer needs that so-called sense of vanity. He wants to protect all this beauty. At this moment, the system ranking has also been completed. The top 10 are still the same few leaders as before. The number of hunters sacrificed was less than 50 since the tower assault began. No mission had ever kept the casualties as low as today's. The Dark Sorceress smiled beautifully at Jin Kongzi. From now on, you will be the hero of taming. The surrounding henchmen, seeing their king dead, began to scatter in panic, fleeing in all directions. The Dark Witch shouted excitedly, well done. To everyone's surprise, Jin Kongzi took less than an hour to conquer the castle. They immediately saw through the final boss's location. The Dark Witch used teleportation again to appear above the boss's head. At that moment, Golden Confucius leaped toward the buff. With one strike, he cleaved the Goblin King in half. Quick! Let's find the ultimate boss. Then the two tightly grasped each other's hands. Darkness spread all around. Teleportation activated. In the next second, the two of them appeared directly above the battlefield. He came to the back of Captain Hei Long. He said, I have a small map of the battlefield. It marks the location of the final boss. Upon hearing this, the Dark Witch's eyes lit up. Why didn't you tell me sooner? He turned around sharply and found the Sword Saint staring intently at him. Moreover, the old man declared that he would follow him for 24 hours. Watching the Sword Saint effortlessly slay the surrounding minions, Jin Kongzi helplessly walked toward the witch. At this moment, all the warriors were fighting fiercely. Jin Kongzi didn't choose to steal the spotlight this time, but silently watched everything happen from behind. While he was quietly slacking off, Jin Kongzi suddenly felt a chill down his spine. At this moment, the goddess once again appeared in the sky. Jin Kongzi immediately activated the teleport. He arrived on the battlefield of the 11th level once more. The Dark Witch instantly took control of the army. The Grandmasters responded as well. To give him 5 days' time, he would prove his innocence. The old man, though skeptical, agreed to let me keep an eye on this kid. Now that everything has been resolved, the 12th level will also have a different ending, only to predict the number that the Sword Saint pointed to behind him. So after numerous deaths, every time, Confucius would predict a few more of the Sword Saint's moves. Finally, in the last attempt, he convinced the Sword Saint. The world returned to darkness. Time rewound 24 hours. To convince the world's greatest sword master that he was a prophet, Jin Kongzi had killed himself 365 times. Then he placed his hand behind his back, challenging Jin Kongzi to guess how many fingers he was holding up. And at this moment, Jin Kongzi suddenly pulled out a dagger and stabbed it toward his own neck. He claimed to be a prophet. He possessed the ability to foresee the future. No matter what move you make next, I know it all clearly. The Sword Saint frowned. Perhaps it was these experiences that turned him into a righteous sword master. The next day, in the suburban forest, Confucius and the sword master met as scheduled. Jin Konzi was the first to speak. Actually, the old man wasn't like this before. He also had a harmonious and happy family. But an accident occurred during one of his outings. His daughter and son-in-law were killed by a murderer. Only his grandson and granddaughter managed to survive. Just as the Sword Saint turned to leave, Jin Konzi ran out. If you want to know what kind of person I am, let's meet in the suburban forest tomorrow. Watching the Sword Saint's departing figure, the paladin couldn't help but sigh. Ihan also stood in front of Jin Konzi. She loudly reprimanded the Sword Saint to leave my shop. The Sword Saint looked at the paladin, who had never killed, and a kind-hearted apothecary. He sheathed his sword. He indicated that today doesn't seem appropriate. This gentleman stays. I need to talk to you. But the paladin stepped forward, not giving way at all. Just as the two were on the verge of drawing their swords, that this was a guest introduced to him. Ihan then grabbed Jin Konzi's hand, and excitedly said, "You truly are my angel." At this moment, the sword master also arrived as expected. He came in and directly said to both of them, "Please leave," and after testing, found that everything he said was true. His face couldn't help but falling into something strange. Jin Konzi approached Ihan and told him not to worry. Ihan was so frightened that he immediately knelt and begged for mercy. He kept mumbling that he was running a small business and that he had done nothing illegal. He claimed to be a very good citizen. The paladin also used lies because that was part of his plan. He needed to convince the Sword Saint not to kill him. Then the two arrived at Ihan's pharmacy. Ihan curiously asked who the person behind Jin Konzi was. When he realized it was the paladin lord. Just as everyone was relieved to have passed successfully, Jin Konzi asked the paladin to accompany him on a trip, so the two began to stroll through the crowded streets. After a little while, he reminded Jin Konzi that the guy was following. Jin Konzi was not surprised. The chairman must agree to one of his requests unconditionally. Of course, this request would not violate anyone's principles. After thinking it over, the judge agreed. The Duchess also followed suit and agreed. Then, Jin Konzi shared the information about the 11th floor with everyone. Just returned, Jin Konzi was in the cafe. When the dark sorceress asked him, "Are you leaving so soon?" Jin Konzi turned around and slowly spoke. He decided to reveal the information about the 11th floor in advance, and as a condition of exchange, the man, in order to successfully conquer the 12th floor of the giant tower, was killed by the Demon King. He returned 24 hours earlier. He needs to replan his strategy to defeat the Autumn Rain Demon King. The first step of the plan is to conquer the President Present. Show's psychological shadow of the Demon King is about to resurface. Punish the evil spirits. After it ends, the time will also rewind 24 hours. This time, Master Jin is going to make a big scene. Unique. Jin Konzi looked at these three skills thoughtfully. He could only choose to hide. In the end, Jin Huan grabbed a golden card, and because Jin Huan's hunter level has increased to a certain point, this resurrection will have side effects. This skill can only be used once a week. It can turn people I have killed with my own hands into monsters, but they can only become goblins, half-orcs, or skeletons. This third skill is the most. This will plunge the enemies into endless fear. The second is Echo of the Heart. Your emotions will serve as fuel, enhancing your aura and abilities. The last one is the Summon of 100 Ghosts. Meanwhile, the Sword Emperor had already reviewed all the skills. Jin Confucius looked at the Sword Emperor and said, "I'll leave it to you from here on. First, the first skill, Hate Like Rain. The GBS effect activates as long as there's innocent blood flowing nearby. Then, blood rain will fall from the sky. Grandpa's here to kill you." At this moment, Jin Konzi intended to die at the Demon King's hands on purpose. He wanted to start the second round of battle. Jin Konzi entered the death space and began selecting skills. But before Jin Konzi and the others could react, he suddenly let go of the witch's hand. He raised the holy sword, ready to strike down at the Demon King. In midair, he defiantly flipped the Demon King the middle finger. The witch moved beside everyone. She prepared to teleport everyone directly to the Demon King. He reached out to Jin Konzi. At the moment Jin Konzi shook hands, they were both transported into the air in front of the Demon King. Seeing this, the sorceress quickly scattered the bronze mirrors around her. She used the mirrors to weaken the Dark Lord's charged attack and reflected back. The Sword Saint and the Viper then dispersed the remaining shockwave. In the next moment, Everyone started fighting chaotically. At this moment, Master Jean charged toward the Demon Lord alone. The Dark Lord moved at that moment. He raised the black giant sword high. Blood-red energy quickly gathered in the sky. He calmly said, "My name is Liao Fan." But he noticed Master Jean was too focused on the fight, completely ignoring what he said. Liao Fan smiled with satisfaction. Then he joined Master Jean in charging into the fray. The two then joined forces to wreak havoc on the battlefield. The general followed closely behind, leading the Empire's army into the fray. At this moment, the Viper approached behind Master Jean. He turned his head to look at Jean Confucius. With an appreciative expression, the young man said, "You are excellent. My name is Marcus Kallenberg." Jean Konzi quickly responded as well. Your presence became even more dazzling, and his level rose accordingly. One step closer to becoming an SSS rank hunter. At this moment, the Sword Saint also charged in, killing all the goblins around Confucius with one strike. I will prove to the tower that what Yin Di can do, I, Jean Kongzi, can do even better. With his killing spree, the tower's notification followed immediately. He has entered the legendary state of all things. At this moment, he remembered that bastard Yin Di. Why did the tower give him an EX level skill? What gives him the right to conquer the 50th floor as a psychopathic loser? If that's the case, no one knows how much time has passed. Shin Kongzi can no longer recall how many monsters he killed, but the world before him begins to change. The colors of all things start to fade. Only he himself remains in color. I stand against the army of 10,000. Directly drink the secret potion, unleashing his potential. With a single swing, a head falls to the ground. Jean Kongzi relentlessly slaughters the Demon King's army. Go ahead, use your sword to make them lose their power. Then, take advantage of that moment to kill them. It's time to show your strength. Become the hero of the Empire here. In order to slay the Demon King, fight with all your might. Try to hold on by yourself. Then Golden Confucius grabbed an enhanced adrenaline shot and downed it all in one go. At this moment, the goblins charged forward. Then the two of them held hands, teleported to the battlefield. Watching hordes of monsters rush forward, the sword hilt appeared behind him. Confucius, this is your chance to hone your swordsmanship. The witch looked at the palace behind her. He really died just like that. But now is not the time to mourn. Let's deal with the current problem first. Hundreds of thousands of imperial soldiers were instantly reduced to ashes. Even the golden statue on the city wall was affected, and the great hall behind was reduced to ruins with a single strike. The Duchess in charge of finances didn't survive either. She was instantly killed by the Demon Lord's blade. No, I plan to win the war. While they were chatting, the Demon King raised the mysterious giant sword wrapped in black mist. With one swing, it's the first time I've heard a beautiful woman speak like this. After saying this, he turned and left. Just as he was about to teleport away, Jean Kongzi requested, "Please teleport me to the Demon King's presence." The witch looked at him in surprise. Do you want to be a suicide agent? The blood rain near the walls also comes to a stop at this moment. The soldiers are also served by this sight. The Dark Witch shouted, "Stand up." The soldiers all helped each other to their feet. Jean Kongzi tilted his head and looked at the Dark Witch beside him, thinking, you are the true walls of this country. As long as you stand, this country will not perish. God will protect us. In an instant, the holy sword radiates brilliant light. Looking out from the wall, there was a group of desperate soldiers below. At this moment, the Dark Witch gazed sharply at the soldiers. Then, standing on the wall, he shouted, "Stand up. The glory of the Empire. Your holy sword can inspire people." With that, the two shook hands instantly. I agree. In the next moment, they teleported to the top of the city wall. But upon arrival, they found the battle situation was dire. He was ready to calm the soldiers on the wall, to stabilize the current situation. On the way there, the Dark Witch reached out her hand and quickly said, "If you agree, I can teleport you to the wall instantly. Command the NPCs to join the battle together. Lead them into the fight." Then he immediately began to plan the battle. Different goals were assigned to everyone. Then he rushed toward the city wall with the witch. The difficulty of the mission is SSS. The Viper looked at the battlefield outside in terror. This army has already been weakened. There's no way just the few of them can handle this. But Jean Kongzi confidently said, there are no unbeatable challenges in the tower. We need to make good use of our positions in the Empire. No matter how many heroes you find, I will shatter your spirits. Let the evil spirits devour your bodies. Then the mission of the giant tower has appeared. Mission objective: stop the weakened Demon King's attack. But just as everyone was falling into despair, Jean Kongzi appeared before everyone, holding the holy sword. Now we begin to prepare for a counterattack. However, the Autumn Rain Demon King said, Do you think bringing in heroes will save the empire? They are just humans like you. Wouldn't that solve everything? Let's go destroy the Demon Lord's core together. Finally, the Autumn Rain Demon Lord descended onto the battlefield. At that moment, a rain of blood began to fall from the sky. Our focus should be on dealing with the Demon King, not on this so-called traitor. Maybe this so-called traitor is something the system forced on us to create infighting. As long as we keep attacking the tower, defeating the final Demon Lord, I won't kill these people for now. When everyone stopped fighting, young Master Jean began to carefully analyze for everyone. Look at this. It says to destroy the Demon King's core on the 20th floor. And please introduce your granddaughter to me. If your granddaughter enters this tower, upon hearing the mention of his granddaughter, the Sword Saint immediately stopped fighting. He turned around and said fiercely, "Considering how sensible you are," immediately shouted to the Sword Saint, regarding what just happened, please hear me out. Please stop hitting. Let's all talk first. The paladin sensed something was wrong. He immediately said to Confucius Jean, "You're the only one left without a choice now. The reward is trustworthy. I leave all the decisions to you." Confucius Jean, watching the president's battle. With one strike, the Sword Saint severed the little girl's arm. This left the Holy Sorceress completely powerless in combat. Meanwhile, the Viper was being overwhelmed by the Sword Saint. It looked like he was about to be taken down. At that moment, the Dark Sorceress and the Duchess also joined the fight. The Sword Saint immediately drew his sword and cursed, "You beasts, you finally revealed your true colors." The Paladin angrily scolded them to calm down a bit. "Why are you acting like this again?" At this moment, the Sword Saint had already engaged in battle with the two. She rushed over instantly. The last person was also taken out by him. At this moment, a message came from the giant tower. 3 warriors have died. They were not the Demon Lord's minions. The 2 Lolas strike directly, instantly killing one. The Viper follows up by taking out another. At this moment, the last person tries to escape, but the little girl wouldn't let him go. The goddess sees everyone turning against each other, lamenting the foolishness of the warriors, while the Demon King looks on and laughs heartily. One of the judges directly speaks, "I believe the members of the 5 major guilds only need to eliminate the others to know." At this moment, the snake's back is chilling. None of the 10 people present chose the Demon King's reward. Where did the traitor come from? This situation is exactly the same as when we first conquered the tower. It seems this time it will be a river of blood again. They are urging the Paladin to start planning immediately. He asks each of his teammates if they have chosen the Demon King's reward, and the answer from them is all no. The worst case scenario has happened. They all, without exception, told the truth. Now the Dark Sorceress starts warning everyone that if anyone lets me know who the traitor is, I will definitely make them die in the most painful way. At this moment, everyone is nervously looking around, afraid that a teammate might suddenly turn on them. Level 11 dungeon. One of the top 10 is a traitor. The remaining 8 are heroes, and one person gives up the reward. The traitor can reach level 99 by killing all the heroes. Indeed, someone chose the Demon King. So what comes next? The hunt begins. This is a deadly game between the goddess and the Demon King. Everyone present is forced to participate in the challenge, and the number of people choosing the goddess's reward is 8. One person chose the Demon King's reward. Upon hearing that someone chose the Demon King's reward, everyone fell into endless fear. They nervously looked at each other. The wealthiest Duchess chose the treasurer. After everyone had chosen their rewards, the tower began counting the people. A total of 10 people had made their choices. One person gave up the reward. The heretic inquisitor chooses the imperial general. The Viper chose the captain of the guard. The paladin chose the minister of foreign affairs. The witch chose the chancellor, and she also told the others not to choose the Demon King. People who choose the devil are called traitors. The holy knight on the side also said, "If you are willing to believe me, I can help you find the traitor." After understanding the situation, everyone began to choose their positions one after another. Suddenly, the contents of the reward appeared beneath his feet. Everyone turned to look. They were all astonished. It seems that the giant tower wants us to play a werewolf killing game. The judge at one end touched his chin. Then we call those who choose the goddess warriors. The golden light shines brightly. I choose the reward of the goddess, and I will serve as the leader of the imperial knights. At this moment, the members of the knights outside are recommending us to pledge our loyalty to the supreme sword of the empire. At the same time, the judge on the other end of the third also saw the reward. He waved his hand. "I will not choose any rewards." The witch beside him was instantly stunned. At this moment, the second-ranked sword saint also saw the rewards and rubbed his chin. "It seems your choice is the safest." Immediately, he waved his hand. After hearing this, Confucius pondered deeply. He chose to take the safest path. Then he faced everyone and said that the 11th layer of rewards had appeared before him. I have now made my decision. The Sword Emperor turned his head and sat in the corner and said proudly, in any case, this is a trap. I have warned you before. Don't be ungrateful. The demon-level monster on the 99th floor is that terrifying. Yet the Sword Emperor held his forehead. There are no demon-level monsters there. Instead, there are ones even more brutal. At that moment, and it's so malicious it's sickening. Trap. I hope you continue to maintain your current state. Take your time with the strategy. Some things can't be rushed. Jin Konzi looked at the Sword Emperor, then get killed by the Demon King and come back. Seeing this, Konzi said with a serious expression, don't do that. I failed only after climbing to the 99th floor alone. That's why I said it's a trap. Because the Flame Emperor will definitely choose the Demon King of Autumn Rain. But he didn't clear the 99th floor. At this moment, everyone looks at Kim Gongja in confusion. Jin Konzi was still somewhat tempted at this moment. Why not go check out the 99th floor? At this moment, Kim Gongja looks at the surrounding guild leaders. If I just kill them, can I directly reach the 99th floor? The Sword Emperor immediately warns that it's a trap. Kim Gongja stares blankly into the air. I know. As long as you defeat the top 10 warriors besides yourself, you can be directly teleported to the 99th floor of the tower. However, there are limitations on the reward. Only one person can receive this reward. If multiple people choose it, a random selection will be made to guard the goddess or the demon king Yu. The first reward allows him to take an important position in the empire, and at the same time, inherit the ability and prestige of that position. The second reward is the same as the goddess's protection, but it comes with an additional gift. Receive the tower's reward, because he ranked first as a hunter. Now, the first place reward is being issued. Suddenly, a golden goddess and a black demon king appeared before him. There are two options for the reward. This man faced a significant choice. One could make him 100 times stronger, while the other could lead him to the peak of his life. But he chose to give it up outright. After clearing the 11th floor, Jin Konzi, the witches beside them were all stunned. He just let him go. The paladin was astonished and said that everything he said was true. At that moment, a prompt from the tower suddenly appeared. A golden goddess and a black demon appeared before him. Please feel free to agree to my request. The Sword Saint was momentarily at a loss for words. The golden boy scratched his head and said, for someone as important as you, as long as you don't become my enemy, I would be very satisfied. He was stunned on the spot. The Sword Saint actually apologized to him. Jin Konzi immediately, with great respect, said to the Sword Saint, please teach me swordsmanship. To be precise, if I ask you to practice swordsmanship with me in the future, killing based solely on one's own judgment. I have upheld the principle of not sparing any evil person to get this far, but from now on, I will no longer let such things happen. Jin Konzi stared at the sincerely apologizing Sword Saint. Or would he openly use the skill card to defend himself? At this moment, the Sword Saint slowly sheathed his sword. You're Jin Konzi, the hunter, right? If you truly haven't been killing the innocent, I sincerely apologize for my actions. My judgment was too hasty. The Sword Saint was caught in an internal struggle, standing there at a loss. Jin Konzi quietly watched, and couldn't help but think to himself, would he think we were working together to deceive him? How should we account for what just happened? If it weren't for the power of the guild leaders just now, I probably would have been dead by now. Shouldn't you be apologizing to me now? I wonder what the Sword Saint thinks about this. And that person was a bona fide murderer. The paladin chimed in, saying it was all true. The Sword Saint broke out in a cold sweat. Meanwhile, the judge on the side started laughing heartily. Jin Konzi approached the Sword Saint and said, since the previous misunderstandings have been cleared up, now you don't believe me? The Sword Saint was rendered speechless. Just then, Confucius Jin took the initiative to state the facts. I have indeed killed someone, but I only killed one person. The Sword Saint immediately defended. Isn't that exactly what you all trained him to be, an elite assassin? Confucius smiled wryly, you're right. But the paladin insisted, what you said is still a lie. The old man was completely baffled. He started questioning the paladin. Didn't you just agree with the plan? So he didn't actually kill 4,000 people? The Sword Saint panicked instantly. Could his skill have malfunctioned? The paladin also interjected and said to the Sword Saint, the question you asked at the beginning is strange. Can one person really kill so many? Pointing at Gold Confucius, You see this despicable person condemned by heaven. How many dirty things have you made this kid do? Before he could finish speaking, the paladin immediately said, "You're lying." The Sword Saint was stunned. The Sword Saint also trusted the paladin's character and approved of the plan. The Sword Saint then questioned Jinkonzi, "Did you kill over 4,000 people?" "Yes, I killed them all." The Sword Saint immediately became agitated. As soon as Jinkonzi heard this, he immediately perked up. Isn't this a perfect chance to prove his innocence and slap the old man in the face? He decisively agreed to the proposal. "I can discern the truth of the statements here for you. This knight has the powerful ability to see into people's hearts. But now, it's being used to test whether the Sword Saint is lying." The paladin said with a serious face, "If you believe in life, then I will expose the lies here for you. Then I will make a small sacrifice." He then revealed his exclusive skill, the lie detector. Once activated, it can discern the truthfulness of what others say. The paladin then told the Sword Saint and Jinkonzi that if you believe in me, shouldn't we all be working together to clear the 12th floor now? Are we going to help the NPCs save the Empire? Didn't they ask us for help? At this moment, the paladin spoke up. Jinkonzi said, "That's right. If you don't accept this, then let's have a real fight." Just as tensions were rising, Golden Confucius stepped in and told everyone to stop arguing. The NPCs on the 11th floor are all fighting to protect the nation. If you'd been willing to help, the number of casualties would have at least been cut in half. Since you're ranked number 1 on the leaderboard, you should have the sense of responsibility that comes with being number 1. But then the Sword Saint roared furiously, and it was so loud, and not just out of nominal greed. Hearing this, the Dark Witch was furious, grinding her teeth. The Venomous One cursed angrily from the side, rolling his eyes. Before pretending to be noble during the challenge of floors 5 to 9, he could only watch as Jinkonzi got away with it. The Sword Saint pointed at the witch and said that he didn't join her at first, just to prove that he could reach the top of the tower on his own. He shouted at everyone, wanting them to know that he could succeed on his own. At this moment, Jinkonzi walked directly in front of the Sword Saint. "Can we talk? I don't know why you want to attack me. It's a pleasure to meet you. I admire you very much." But the Sword Saint roared at the number above Jinkonzi's head, declaring he is a murderer. The Sword Saint, who has always been against evil, was now being watched by President Wu. He has simultaneously joined our 5 major guilds. His status is equal to ours. So are you sure you want to take action against us? The Sword Saint was so furious that he gritted his teeth, afraid that one person definitely can't withstand everyone. At this moment, the Dark Witch beside them stops sighing. She prepares to join them in the fight, and then tells the Sword Saint, "The reason we're stopping you is because of me. We have signed a contract with Jinkonzi." The blonde lowly happily said, "Then I'll take it." Then the Sacred activated the Beast God. The Serpent and Paladin were instantly strengthened. The boost lasts for 300 seconds. The 3 of them are ready for battle. At this moment, the Sword Saint was surrounded by the 3 guild leaders. The blonde lowly turned to the Duchess, asking for 10,000 gold coins. The Duchess wanted some interest, but the situation didn't wait another moment. Gold coins began to rain from the sky. The Sword Saint turned and slashed twice, instantly blocking their sneak attack. This overwhelming strength made the Viper couldn't help but remark, "This old man's a monster. Why so busy?" And Kim Konzi looked at the cursing Viper with a grunt. "You're making this very difficult for us." And the Sword Saint didn't explain why he wanted to kill Jinkonzi. At this moment, one of the judges didn't say a word, immediately using a divine technique to send off the god. Meanwhile, the Poison Dragon and the Paladin charged from behind the Sword Saint to see how many people his opponent has killed. At this moment, the blonde lowly blocked the sword. The Sword Saint viciously declared that he must kill this beast today. "Whoever dares stop me will die." The blonde lowly hesitantly stated that Jinkonzi is part of our 5 great guilds. People only glanced at the man beside him and directly drew his sword to kill him and silence him. So in his eyes, Jinkonzi is just a mass murderer who killed over 4,000 people. This is also one of the Sword Saint's abilities. The Sword Saint suddenly slashed over with his sword. Fortunately, the little cutie blocked it in time. Then the Sword Saint said fiercely, "I advise you not to get in my way. Today, I will definitely kill this guy, this handsome old man." Then, the group was teleported to the Imperial Palace. At this moment, the adjudicator, Little Cutie, looked at Jinkonzi with admiration. She couldn't believe that even the NPCs obeyed him, just as the two were flattering each other in business. "I hope that when the time comes, the hero will come to help us again." At this time, the Giant Tower announced that the top 10 challengers had been counted. The top 10 can enter the 12th floor early. The rewards will be distributed shortly. Before being teleported, Ace said to Jinkonzi, we're counting on you for our empire. Now you understand my value, right? Then General Base came before Confucius. Thank you for your assistance, brave hero. He then said to Confucius that the war is not over yet. The true Demon King has yet to descend. Not your own strength. Mr. Jean understood the Sword Emperor's good intentions. Then he said to him, before I clear the 20th floor, I will diligently practice swordsmanship under your guidance. Upon hearing this, the Sword Emperor instantly rejoiced. Confucius, the top 10 challengers are as follows. When everyone saw that the first place was Mr. Jean, they were all stunned. Isn't this the guy who passed the 10th floor alone? But the Sword Emperor, with a serious face, said, you only relied on cleverness and luck. He directly delivered a fatal blow to the Goblin King. With the death of the final boss, the Empire achieved victory in this battle. At this time, the giant tower prompted that the contribution leaderboard for the 11th level dungeon was being calculated. The demon army was utterly defeated. In the end, only the Goblin King remained. Jean Konzi seized the opportunity and charged towards the boss. He then performed a bouncing leap into the air, using the skill Gulu Gulu. But you insist on using a sword that only glows. Jean Konzi proudly said, this sword doesn't just glow, even the level 20 boss wants it. Under the leadership of Jean Konzi's holy sword, the hunters charged forward. Thus, possessing the holy sword will bring absolute fortune to the people of the empire. At this moment, Confucius enjoys the feeling of commanding thousands of troops. Yet, the Sword Emperor beside him is not happy at all. There are so many powerful weapons. However, after the empire was unified, he has vanished. The holy sword has also disappeared. But before he vanished, he left a message. The day fate arrives is when the one holding the holy sword descends. The morale of the imperial army surged instantly. They fought fiercely, causing the Demon King's army to retreat step by step. It turned out that after Confucius' death, he directly copied the strategy to command the battlefield. He even exchanged for the holy sword of this world in the shop. This holy sword is said to be a gift from the goddess to the elders of the empire. When he revived at this point in time again, he was already sitting on General Boss's horse, and he also had an additional sword in his hand. At this moment, Confucius led the army straight into the Demon King's forces. The moment he raised the shining goddess holy sword, the general made up his mind. He swung his long sword fiercely. With one strike, Jean Konzi directly entered the death space. He successfully replicated Boss's skill. But how could one end a warrior's life? How is that even possible? Jean Confucius pulls out a dagger. If the general won't take action, then I have no choice but to do it myself. After a brief internal struggle, as long as I die, everyone on the battlefield will receive the blessing of the gods. The Taoist Demon King will naturally harbor hatred. General Base is in disbelief. Is this a suicidal skill? I will give it my all. Then hurry up and kill me. General Base was stunned. Are you joking with me? However, Jean Konzi replied seriously, I have a special ability. And at that moment, he happened to encounter an NPC with this skill. Konzi quickly approached the general. As soon as they met, he said directly, thank you, General, for calling me a hero. I have something I'd like to ask of you, General. Go ahead. As long as it's something I can do. Grant him the opponent's abilities. The key is that he also has the resurrection skill. At this time, Jean Konzi had just reached the 11th floor. He wanted to gain the ability to command an army. Only then would it be possible to clear the 11th floor. But I am confident that I can gain that ability. This general actually heard such an absurd request. He just met the hero who will save the world. And the hero asked to be killed. Simply because the hero's death can either have the strength to single-handedly defeat armies like a sword saint, or lead a local army into battle. But the Sword Emperor questioned if you would choose the latter. Do you have the ability to command an army? Of course I don't. It's to help newcomers adapt to life inside the tower. This includes places like the hunting grounds. Next comes the 11th to 20th floors of the tower. The theme here is devils and warriors. There are only two ways to defeat the Demon King here. Jean Konzi couldn't help but sigh. Indeed, this is a game that relies on strength. And in Jean Konzi's memory, the different floors within the tower have different themes. Levels 1 to 10 are for novice training. The hidden quest reward, Blessing of the Human God, allowing observation of all NPC abilities and locations from levels 11 to 20. However, the rewards have not stopped. He has once again received the protection of the spirit. He can choose to hold an item existing between level 11 and level 20. Everyone began to engage in a chaotic battle with the beasts. Jean Konzi also joined the fight. At that moment, the reward for clearing the 10th level was issued. First, the general reward, Blessing of the God of War, allowing observation of tower maps from levels 11 to 20. Please, quickly assist us in saving the Empire. The hunters present also understood. The mission objective was to help the Akan Empire resist the invasion of the Demon King. Only by successfully defending the supply port could they enter the next layer. The Sword Saint charged forward and started killing, and he was the first to reach the 11th level. The Sword Saint of the layer was stunned. At this moment, he found himself on a vast battlefield. All the soldiers were fighting against the Demon King's army. At that moment, an officer rushed over and shouted, "You are the hero who will save the Empire, right?" A reporter directly asked Master Jean Konzi, "May I ask you a few questions? Did you really clear the 10th level solo?" Jean Konzi astonishingly replied, "I can clear the 20th level solo as well." After saying that, he immediately mentioned the teleportation. Kim Konzi listened intently. He thought that the woman in front of him was definitely more than just a hologram. At that moment, suddenly, a group of reporters appeared behind. Numerous microphones were pointed directly at his face. The goddess's words continued. She kindly reminded humanity that between the 11th and 20th floors, your faith will be tested like never before. I wish you find the final answer and return triumphant. Then the judge followed and vanished with the teleportation. After that, everyone else began to teleport as well. Confucius looked up at the goddess in the sky with awe. The creator of the tower is truly amazing. Why did no one pay attention to the message he left? At that moment, the Sword Saint suddenly looked at the crowd. Jean Konzi was instantly startled. He found me. But then the Sword Saint said the word teleport. He instantly disappeared from the spot. The 11th layer of hell will be opened. That world is under attack by the Demon King. Warriors are needed to lend a hand. Just say the words teleport, and you can enter the 11th layer of the tower. It turned out he was just a holographic projection of the tower, and today marks the historic moment when the tower's beginner tutorial ends. The goddess softly said, "Warriors climbing the great tower, congratulations on passing through the flames of resentment in the Purgatory Mansion. From this moment on, brave warriors, prepare to enter a new world." The fairy who gracefully descended to the mortal world spoke the most terrifying words, but the Sword Saint couldn't bear to listen. He leaped up and slashed down with his sword. However, it didn't cause any harm to him. At that moment, a voice echoes in everyone's ears, "Attention, all hunters. Please note, from today on, the beginner's tutorial has officially ended." A blonde fairy appears before everyone. Everyone inside the tower is witnessing this historic moment. Everyone is chanting the final countdown. Right at the very last moment of the countdown, a giant firework explodes in the sky. People shout and cheer. From the 11th to the 20th floors of the tower, the theme is role-playing. Now it's time to start the challenge on the 11th floor. Time flies. In the blink of an eye, only 11 seconds remain before the tower opens. Upon seeing this, he danced with joy. From now on, he won't have to call him Lord Confucius anymore. And so, the guild matters came to an end. However, before leaving, Shin Kongzi shared some intel. No surprises. Surprisingly, Kongzi won. The witch smiled and said she hoped you would keep your promise. With great power comes great responsibility. I don't care how you want to use me. I just hope you can support me in conquering the giant tower. I want to experience the feeling of reaching the top again. The witch sighed after hearing Fui. At this moment, the two of them also started filming, and I expressed my opinion that I will continue to challenge the 20th floor, 30th floor, 50th floor, until the last 100 floors. No matter how much time it takes, I must conquer him. I hope you handle it rationally. Jean Konzi looked at his cards and said yes. The Duke also dealt the last card. Just then, Golden Confucius stud. We can understand each other's languages. Outsiders, however, treat this place like a dumpster. But even a dumpster can produce roses. When the countdown ends, you will start a completely different life. Then he solemnly said, "This tower is our homeland. We want to create a world where origins don't matter. Everyone can be equal. This is the common goal of all our unions." Thanks to the tower's protection, he lost his family due to the war and wandered aimlessly every day until the appearance of the Great Tower gave him a chance to live again. At that moment, the spy was gesturing behind his back. The outcome was already decided. Now, only the Dark Witch remains at the table. He wasn't in a rush to settle the match. He slowly began to introduce his background. Turns out, he was born in a war-torn country outside the tower. At this moment, the senior venomous snake felt dejected. He could only silently walk towards the audience. Then, the paladin from the self-defense force also fell in battle. This kid must have some kind of ability. Perhaps from the moment we agreed to the match. This person is definitely cheating. He hasn't lost in over 30 rounds. Shin Kongzi said calmly, "Do you have any evidence? If you have no evidence, you're framing me." "I'm so wronged." Kim Konzi always laughs last. You could say he's raking in the profits. After over 30 rounds, all the presidents started questioning their lives. At this moment, the venomous snake suddenly slammed the table and stood up. Master Kong, this guy has a straight. You should just give up. As the matches go on, no matter what hand the opponent has, he's just a weak F-rank hunter. Yet he dares to cheat in front of so many top bosses. And Master Jin's method of cheating is actually to have the Sword Emperor peek at the cards for him. A legendary general's reputation is thus tarnished. At this moment, the Sword Emperor is watching the cards behind the Duke. Then you know what to do next, right? Hearing this, the Sword Emperor became so excited that he danced with joy. Don't worry, I'll handle it. Anyone who cheats, I'll definitely expose them all and receive the same treatment as everyone else. The Baroness immediately agreed to the proposal. The others didn't object either. Each picked up their cards. But Jean Confucius secretly said to the Sword Emperor, "If you don't want to call me Master Confucius anymore. But in that case, I have a condition." Then Kim Konzi pulled out a deck of cards and suggested we decide by playing a game of cards which guild I would join. Whoever comes in first, I'll join them. But if I win, then you all must allow me to join every guild at the same time. The items produced below the 9th floor can hardly sustain normal supplies, and we want to pass through the levels beyond the 10th floor. They need to attract people from the lower levels of society to enter the tower. In addition, it would reignite the motivation of those already inside the tower. Kim Konzi also fully understood that they wanted another Yin Di to lead the era. Then we will have an intense battle for talent. But we've spent too much time on the 9th floor recently. If it weren't for you conquering the 10th floor and proving the value of the tower, people outside would probably have already forgotten about the tower's existence. And now, a food crisis has emerged. Which guild do you plan to join? If you don't plan on joining any guild, please inform us in advance. This will directly affect your public image. Jean Konzi slowly asked at this moment, if I plan to join the guild, what should I do? I had never heard of your world. It's not a completely inactive world. This guy is part of the grand team in our guild. Yet, Jean Konzi looked at them with a calm expression. At this moment, the Black Witch bluntly asked Mr. Jean. Meanwhile, the spy beside him reminded him not to be afraid. They are just trying to scare you. They only want to test you. All the leaders also began to speak. You really are something, aren't you? Before breaking through the 10th level, they started ordering coffee from the shop. Seeing this harmonious scene, the shopkeeper girl's legs went weak. Then everyone started discussing serious matters. Everyone turned their gaze to Jean Konzi. These are all famous people in the tower world. The Duke also mentioned it had been a long time since they gathered like this. He reminisced about breaking through the 2nd floor. Now, everyone has gotten old. Then everyone sat down. Go to hell. This person is the president of the Tianwu sect. Following him was the poison snake. Also present was the chief justice from the Pantheon, the vice president of the self-defense force, the paladin, and the dark sorceress, the president of the Black Dragon Guild. This sudden turn of events shocked Zio a bit. Offered by the Lady Duke and began to rise, preparing to summon their respective presidents. Just then, a one-eyed dragon kicked open the door. He was cursing the damn merchant. What's so great about having money? Someone praised him for being quite bold. Surprisingly, Confucius seemed unfazed. A cat turning into a person is nothing special. Can I still see ghosts? At this moment, everyone saw the exorbitant price. At this moment, in the Moonlight Cafe, the cat in Jean Konzi's arms transforms into a human form. She is an elegant black beauty. He is the richest guild leader within the tower. Looking at the nonchalant Confucius, she was once the weakest S-rank hunter. Now, however, he is being frantically sought after by many top bosses. This is solely because he single-handedly cleared the most difficult SSS-level dungeon. He has broken the pattern of the world within the tower. He has completely freed the hunters inside the tower from the beginner tutorial. I sincerely invite you to join. What do you think? After saying this, the cat jumped down from the chair and transformed into a human form in front of everyone. This elegant black beauty is the leader of the Merchants Alliance, ranked 3rd on the hunter leaderboard. Everyone also began to extend olive branches. They hoped Jean Konzi would join their guild. They were willing to expend a lot of money and power to win him over. Just as Jean Konzi was hesitating on how to choose, the cat in his arms spoke up. I offer 500,000 gold coins and the position of deputy leader of the Merchants Alliance. People from all major guilds instantly began contacting the guild leader. They found the person. He's right inside the cafe. So everyone cleared out the cafe. They started to gather around Jean Konzi. Jean Konzi immediately picked it up. At that moment, people from the top guilds also began to arrive. Jean Konzi was well prepared. He directly handed them their tomorrow. Then the two of them came to the Moonlight Cafe on the 1st floor and faced the wall directly. In a howl of despair, you quickly cover up the constellation of the sword. At that moment, a little cat appeared before me. Are equal, right? I will accompany you to challenge the 100 floors in the future. However, Jean Konzi is not buying this. Alright, from now on when you speak to me, please call me Master Kong. If I defeat the Demon King within 2 lives, you have to call me Lord Confucius. Right, Sword Emperor? Trembling Confucius, huh? Aren't we good partners? So-called partners. That was way too cool. The Sword Emperor is also frantically flattering, but Confucius isn't buying any of it. Don't say these useless things. We agreed before. The guard at the door quickly rushed over. He asked, out of breath, did you clear the 10th floor? Kim Konzi, pretending to be mysterious, smirked. After that, he waved and walked away with big strides. The guard was stunned. Whoa, others thought it was the old sword saint. So, how does it feel going from an extra to the main character? Jean Konzi looked at the messages on his phone. Answering that felt amazing. Just then, the world will issue a notification that the 10th level has been cleared. The 11th level will open in 24 hours. People started to talk all at once. A flood of messages bombarded everyone's phones. Some guessed it was the Black Dragon Guild. However, after clearing it, Confucius wasn't happy, because after seeing the boss's inner trauma, he felt that this world was truly terrible. At that moment, fireworks filled the sky. He unexpectedly caught the favor of the god of jealousy, who granted him the ability of infinite rebirth. What was unexpected is that he cleared the 10th level, a stage no hunter dared to enter, and he was unharmed. Just then, fireworks exploded in the sky. A notification echoed from all floors of the tower. The 10th level has been breached. The 11th level will open in 24 hours. The boy was simply overwhelmed by jealousy. Thank you, big brother. Then the completion prompt sounds. Congratulations, you've cleared the hidden dungeon. The two are transported outside the mansion. Jean Konzi silently gazed at the villa. He said, I found you. Now it's your turn to be the dog. The doll slowly melts. But in the end, Maiden's soul gradually appears. With a sincere smile on her face, the dolls continued to melt away. They were once innocent and good-hearted heroes. Jean Konzi slowly walked into the basement of Mei Deng. He opened the cell door and gently stroked the head of the white-haired doll. No, I'm not afraid. I'll play hide and seek with you. Then, Uncle Golden Confucius covered his eyes and began to count. But these dolls had no choice but to hide. As Jean Konzi touched each doll, the dolls said, come on, play a game with us. Alright, I'll play with you for a bit. Suddenly, the Golden Confucius activated a skill to become immune to flames. The dolls looked at Uncle Golden Confucius in confusion. Aren't you afraid of the flames? In the description of the Hellfire skill, without your permission, no one can leave this hell. So the Demon King allowed the Black Dragon Guild to escape. He slowly walked towards the dolls. Just as he was about to push the door open, he suddenly realized something. Why didn't I think of it? The Black Dragon Guild didn't kill the Demon King back then, but everyone managed to escape. Then just keep clearing the levels. But Kongzi, who scored 100 points, didn't think much of it. The Yen Emperor probably thought the same way. But I don't want to be someone like the Yen Emperor. The two of them continued to the front of the villa. His gaze was sharp. You only have one choice now. Find the real puppet, and then kill him. Don't have that kind of sympathy. The child locked in the basement watched the raging fire before him. Despair appeared in his eyes. After watching the psychological trauma of hellfire without light, Confucius sat on the bed. He noticed that it floated over. Thus, a fire broke out in the villa. Everyone rushed to escape, but no one remembered the child, locked in the basement. Jean Konzi shouted to the crowd to go back and save the child, but it was of no use. Confucius silently said. He explained that these Demon King-level monsters are created based on real events that have occurred in the world. Confucius, looking terrified, asked, why are you only telling me this now? However, just at that moment, the butler in the villa suddenly fell while holding a lantern. Confucius looked at the tragic story unfolding before him and couldn't help but feel sorrow. He was also very angry. How could there still be such madmen in this world? This must be the prototype of the 10th level Demon King, falsely accusing the children of being the cause of the disease, and said they needed to be sacrificed to the gods to save the land. The boy watched his companions killed one by one, while the villagers shouted madly. He would pull the boy out of the cage every day, and use various methods to unleash his beastly desires, until the sacrificial ritual began. The man gathered with the many deranged villagers. He gave a passionate speech on stage. He was deceived by a malicious doctor to come to this villa. Here, there are many other children who share his fate. The doctor ruthlessly locked the boy in a cage. This made the boy experience despair. Not only that, but a hell he would never forget for the rest of his life. Who could have imagined that the horrifying Hell Maiden was based on a 6-year-old child who was burned alive? It turned out that after his death, Jean Konzi entered the childhood nightmare of both the maiden. I witnessed Maiden's tragic childhood firsthand. I have many playmates like you. There was also plenty of delicious food. Then the boy followed and arrived at a mansion. However, what the boy didn't know was that what awaited him was not a safe haven of happiness. Most beggars can't survive the winter. But just then, a richly dressed man walked up to the boy. He gently patted the boy's head and said to him, "Come with me." But a man shuts him out, cursing, "Damn it, what rotten luck." During this time of famine, no one can fill their stomach, let alone the little beggar. Using the skill this time will have side effects. It will recreate the psychological trauma caused by the Hellfire Lantern. Suddenly, the world plunged into darkness. The scene reappears. At this moment, a white-haired child is begging. "So why are none of the dolls targeting me?" The truth is obvious. He possesses a skill that grants others fire immunity. Jiandi's face completely fell. Just as he was waiting for resurrection, he unexpectedly heard a system notification. At all times, be careful with fire. It can grant designated individuals immunity to fire damage. However, ice and water damage is increased by 300%. It turns out Jean Konzi had sensed something was off, because among these tens of thousands of dolls, only the fire immunity was reported. The Stone Sword Emperor's expression changed drastically. Jean Confucius instantly realized the opportunity had arrived. This skill was exactly what he needed. He immediately chose this card. The skill introduction immediately appeared. Why does this guy, Yin Emperor, think this way? I choose the golden card. Is there some sort of conspiracy? So he asked Sword Emperor to introduce the effects of the other skill cards again, then introduced to the last card. After death, Golden Confucius came to the death space again. During the skill card selection phase, Sword Emperor introduced him to the various skills of the boss one by one. When he described the skill card for the Hellfire Barrier, Jean Konzi felt something was off. He chose the wrong one, and what awaits him is only death. Ultimately, he was burned alive by the hellfire. In his final moments, he thought of a past memory. It turns out he was immune to fire, and finally found the boss. Slowly, Jean Konzi's spiritual power has been depleted. At the last moment, he's ready to take a gamble. Casually picks up a doll. Unfortunately, the protagonist's halo didn't appear. The first method, protagonist's aura, finding the real doll through a very slim chance. The second method, a display of strength, having enough spiritual power to confront the prey until the real boss appears. The spiritual energy protecting Jean Konzi is about to give out. He begins to doubt whether he can really complete this challenge. He only has 10 minutes left. At this moment, the Sword Emperor says that when the Sword Saint came to challenge before, he trained himself to last an hour. And now you only have 2 ways to pass, disguised as a lantern, and eliminate it. He started carefully searching every corner, searching for the real doll. But there has been no progress. Time is slowly passing. The doll slowly moved closer to him. He was extremely nervous at this moment, but he refused to give up easily. Relying on his memories from rebirth, he realized that the only way to pass was to find the final vengeful hellfire. At this moment, Jean Konzi and Jian Di arrived outside the villa, but Jean Konzi still decided to challenge the villa. They slowly walked into the villa. The two had just entered the villa. The villa was engulfed in roaring flames. Many hunters who tried to enter here were attacked by wax dolls, causing some people to become extremely twisted inside. Psychopaths. Some were burned to death in the raging flames. Others mysteriously disappeared. Then they all said in unison, "Come play red light, green light with us." He had spent 40 million to buy this villa, but the next day, it became worthless. It turns out they had performed a sacrificial ritual here. Since then, this place became every hunter's nightmare. Looking at the 3-story villa in front of them, they both walked inside. Just as Jingtanzi opened the door and entered the hall, one creepy, terrifying doll after another came into view. Their eyes stared fixedly at the frightened person. At this moment, the two were at odds. Neither would give in. Bystanders looked at Jingtanzi in shock. They all thought he had gone mad. Then the two reached the 4th level of the tower. "You have to honestly tell me what skills the Demon Lord on the 10th floor has." The Sword Emperor immediately agreed. "A little brat like you thinks having some powerful skills makes you invincible?" The two instantly started spitting insults at each other. But Jean Konzi directly raised 2 fingers and said, "If I can't break through the 10th level with 2 lives, then I will call you Master. But if I succeed, you'll have to call me Master Confucius from now on. But I have one condition." However, Jean Konzi was completely unconcerned. He directly said, "Let's go attack the 10th level now." The Sword Emperor was instantly enraged. He had just finished the 5th level. "You want to go to the 10th level now? Are you a little brat that arrogant now?" For example, the Flame Emperor. His signature ability is fire. So naturally, his spiritual energy takes the form of fire. Therefore, based on that effect just now, you can see your own characteristics. The Sword Emperor felt that his fierce form was either fire or form. He wore a blissful expression, enjoying the feeling. Meanwhile, the Sword Emperor fell into deep thought. "Is that effect sparks or blood?" Jean Konzi asked, was that an upgrade effect just now? Yes, but it also implies something. You can tell the form of your spiritual energy from the effect that appears during an upgrade. At this moment, a notification suddenly popped up behind Jinkonzi, saying your presence has become more noticeable. Along with it, the golden light from the symbol tower appeared. Hunter Jinkonzi's level has increased. Countless red lights from the magic array surrounded him, instantly enveloping Jinkonzi. Used 6 lives just to barely defeat him. Can I show off a little? Jinkonzi looked at the skill he gained after dying 5 times, sighing in amazement. Such a useless skill really feels like a waste. Jinkonzi proudly shouted that he had finally killed the strongest one. The Sword Emperor scratched his ear. It's just a monster, after all, and you always use this move to ambush. What's there to be proud of? Jinkonzi, however, was full of discontent. But why is there someone besides me who can use the feather of the king so fluently? But just at that moment of distraction, Jinkonzi's dagger pierced directly into the goblin's nape. The era of the Goblin King came to an end, as a pink glow slowly appeared around him. In the next moment, suddenly, Jinkonzi jumped toward the goblin, and shouted Gulu Gulu in midair. The Goblin King was instantly stunned. What the hell? Just like that, a week passed. In an endless cycle of death, he finally reached the 5th floor. The massive body of the Goblin King sat on the throne. Jinkonzi silently watched. The goblin fell to the ground. The spy watching the scene was really infuriated. I knew you would do this. So despicable. You actually deceived the naive goblin. Jinkonzi said nonchalantly, let's go conquer the next floor. Yo, check it out. The next second, the goblin was stunned. The naive goblin thought he had met a fellow villager. However, in the next second, he had his throat slit by Jinkonzi. With a thud, the dagger in hand spun and danced. With a leap, charged in front of the goblin. However, just as the goblin prepared to counterattack, the golden Confucius skill activated. He said a rap to the half-orc. However, Jinkonzi saw through it and chose the rap singing and dancing skill instead. Then the two arrived at the 3rd floor of the giant tower, instantly drank the elixir, saw a goblin and prepared to attack. After making their choice, the two returned home. At this time, the emperor was furious. It turned out that the emperor had deliberately mixed up the skill order just to make Jinkonzi choose the shelter of reproduction. All along, he could only see the back of the cards, but now, with Sword Emperor's help, doesn't this mean he can choose any skill he wants? Then he chose Chi Yan's cut. The Sword Emperor is Jinkonzi's biggest buff. In the space of death, Jinkonzi was about to choose a skill card when Sword Emperor suddenly said, I can see the description of the skills. This immediately put Jinkonzi in a state of excitement. He directly chose the skill you check now. Back in reality, the Sword Emperor instantly exploded in anger. Damn it! I thought I could trick him. I really never expected this. Of course, he chose yo check it out. Besides, he had already seen through the Sword Emperor's little trick. It turns out the Sword Emperor deliberately mixed up the skill order just to make him pick that awkward skill to activate. As a result, Jinkonzi ran directly towards the 2nd card. But you'll be stuck in a state of the prostitute is too beautiful. Jin Confucius was completely dumbfounded. What kind of nonsense is this? The Sword Emperor next to him urged him to pick the first one quickly. But how could a pure-hearted young man like Jin Confucius possibly choose that? I'll only say this once. The first card, Breeding Gecko, F level. After using it, you'll be in a state of estrus all year round. The second card, Yo-Yo Cut Canal, F level. After using it, goblins will be stuck in a singing, dancing, and rapping loop. Of course, you don't trust my eyes? Jinkonzi was suddenly overjoyed. Wow, this cheat is amazing. He asked the Sword Emperor, then hurry up and tell me what abilities you have. The Sword Emperor stroked his chin and said, listen carefully. Jinkonzi expressed that he couldn't see the skills again. He could only see the card colors and randomly pick one. But the Sword Emperor stated that he could see everything clearly. Jinkonzi was instantly shocked, meaning that all the cards were aligned. Yet you, sitting across from me, can see everything clearly. Damn, the monster's skills can be copied too. Jinkonzi was about to randomly choose a skill. He'd go back a day and try again. But at that moment, the Sword Emperor casually slapped him and said, why would you pick such a useless skill? In an instant, both entered the realm of death. This is where I stayed temporarily before I returned. I call it the underworld. Before I could finish speaking, the two of them were stunned by what they saw. Do you feel like you're about to die? Then why not just die right away? As soon as he finished speaking, another orc silently appeared behind him. With one swing, he smashed him into a pulp. Under the relentless effort of Jinkonzi, the goblin was taken down. However, Jinkonzi's body was pushed to its limits, causing him immense suffering. At that moment, the Sword Emperor smiled and asked, Does it hurt? In the next instant, he slipped past it directly. He then drew the dagger from behind him. With a powerful leap, he flew in front of the half-orc. He fiercely stabbed it into the goblin's neck. The golden boy no longer chooses to run away. He prepares to confront it head-on. At this moment, he quickly lets the spiritual energy within him flow. Just then, 10 unyielding attacks swept in. Startled, Confucius crouched to dodge the attack. The spiritual energy can't flow smoothly at all. Jin Tonzi fled rapidly. The Sword Emperor said beside him, "You need to make the flow of spiritual energy in your body as fast as a highway. Only by doing this can one become strong." Under the relentless oppression of the monster, it's as if the body can't keep up with the mind. The Sword Emperor stepped forward and instructed to focus the spiritual energy on the feet. A simple shift is all it takes to avoid the attack. But because Jin Tonzi's spiritual energy hasn't circulated yet, right now his body is like a swamp. But to him, the goblin looked like it was in slow motion. This allowed Jin Tonzi to easily dodge the monster's attack. Moreover, he could see the moves clearly. However, after dodging the blow, he instantly felt overwhelmed. He suddenly felt a strong tightening sensation in his heart. Immediately after, his body became unusually sensitive. All functions have been significantly and comprehensively enhanced. At this moment, behind him, a huge goblin charged at him. This left even the Sword Emperor stunned. It turns out that after Jin Tonzi obtained the elixir, he came to the third level of the giant tower to prepare for an experiment. However, at the moment he drank it, this man had just taken a forbidden pill. Before he could even unleash it, his ability was instantly wiped out by the goblin. But what Jin Tonzi never expected was, after he died, he was even able to copy the monster's skills. And at that moment, behind him, a huge goblin charged at him. Jian Di shouted in shock instantly. The zombie started running. "If you don't want to die." However, the moment he drank it, a strong tightness suddenly surged in his heart. Right after that, his body became unusually sensitive, and all his functions improved dramatically. He could even sense the flow of spiritual energy around him. Jian Di quickly approached. "What does it mean to be kind hunters like us? Did you take a liking to her, you rascal?" The next day, Jin Tonzi went straight to the third level of the giant tower. He was ready to test the effects of the elixir. Thus, the two quickly became good friends. At the time of parting, Han said that he could be contacted any time if needed. "I will prioritize your requests." After they said goodbye, "I hope that kind hunters like us will succeed. So we should take care of each other. Let's cheer for each other." This scene directly breaks through the regrets of a difficult life. "I am deeply moved inside. I definitely believe in your abilities, right? Who would believe such words? Actually, the reason is quite simple. Because you look kind and beautiful, so that's why I would help you." At this moment, he did not leave. He nervously asked why. "Why would you entrust such an expensive elixir to a nobody like me?" Jin Tonzi's inner thoughts exploded. "I can't just say I know you will be a great alchemist 10 years from now." With that, the two of them left the place. 4 days later, at Jin Tonzi's home, Han had already brought the prepared medicine. This time there were a total of 30 bottles. He handed them directly to Jin Tonzi. He directly looked up and seriously said it would only take 4 days. He mentioned that it could actually be done even faster, but considering the need to purchase equipment again, it might be a bit late. Jin Tonzi happily nodded and said 4 days would be no problem. This elixir can maximally stimulate the human reflex nerves. Jian Di was astonished on the side. He could actually tell the effects of the medicine just from the formula. It seems this alchemist does have some skills. Just as Jin Tonzi was about to ask how long it would take to complete, Jin Tonzi quickly explained it wasn't poison and conveyed to Han the materials proposed by the Sword Emperor. Looking at these materials made of poisons, Han seemed to be deep in thought. Then, with an excited expression, he said that this formula is very powerful. Han directly asked Jin Confucius what medicines he needed, but he still mentioned a little that he is a principled person. If he were to make poison, it would be absolutely impossible. He had already discussed with the Merchant Alliance how much money was needed to purchase materials. He can just go and collect them directly. Of course, it's best to keep the budget within 20,000 gold coins. After the two of them agreed on the price. "But if it's convenient, could you pay a portion up front? It seems he's really in a tight spot right now. He can't even show basic hospitality." Jin Confucius then said, "The elixir made by Sis." Then Han sat down and asked, "Will you really pay me 20,000 gold coins?" Jin Tonzi said, "If you don't believe me, I can pay in advance." Han waved his hand. "That's not necessary." 20,000 gold coins. Han immediately invited the wealthy patron inside, but as soon as he pushed the door, he accidentally broke it off. The two of them looked at the room's condition. They couldn't help but wonder, "Are you really going to drink this?" And with a big smile said, "What potion does the customer need? I can make any kind of potion. What price range of medicine are you looking for?" Then he heard Jin Tonzi's response. He was stunned. preparing to play out a classic hero saving the damsel scene. Then he asked the shopkeeper, "Are you still doing business?" Hearing that there was business, he immediately wiped away his tears. But not only were they unrecognized by the public, he was even considered a ruthless merchant and met with rejection. At his most desperate moment, Jin Konzi happily ran up to him. He was once the most popular beauty among alchemists. The potions he crafted were in short supply, but 10 years ago, around this time, he was living in misery. The stamina potions he carefully made were sold at cost price, but the crowd watching quickly dispersed. Jin Konzi looked at the green-haired beauty, teary-eyed. He cheerfully walked over. The alchemists were looking for him, the future owner of one of the top 5 alchemy workshops. Who would buy a stamina potion for 40 gold coins? A shop like yours will close down sooner or later. But the woman shouted loudly to the crowd, "You should thank me. Only with me can you buy potions this cheap? I feel utterly desolate. Even the alchemy equipment has been taken away to pay off debts." Just when he was about to intervene, he was dragged down to the ground. The man said, "I suggest you stop doing alchemy work." Jin Konzi indicated that you can't do it. Just forget about believing it. At this moment, a green-haired woman was arguing with a man right in front of them. Looking at his current state, "Come, let me take you to see the most powerful alchemist in the world." Then the two of them arrived at a dilapidated place. This dirty and chaotic environment is even worse than the nearby slums. This made the Sword Emperor doubt whether there really is an alchemist you mentioned in a place like this. That person doesn't seem to appear in the hunter rankings. However, this is exactly the result Jin Konzi wanted. Jin Konzi turned around gracefully. He laughed heartily, saying, "Heaven helps me." It seems that now he only needs to spend a little money to buy the highest grade elixir. In the end, he was a step too late. The old man had already entered the shop. He would definitely buy all the medicine. Just as the Sword Emperor felt dejected, Jin Konzi has already opened the search query. Luckily, the old man didn't notice anything in the end. He turned and left. Jin Konzi survived without any danger. But at this moment, the Sword Emperor seemed to realize something. He hurriedly rushed towards the store. It turned out the person approaching was the Sword Saint. Watching the Sword Saint walk slowly past, Jin Konzi didn't dare make a sound. He feared the Sword Saint would notice him and kill him too. After already killing 5,000 people, as the two were chasing each other, the Sword Emperor suddenly stopped. Then, with a serious expression, he told Jin Konzi to quickly find a place to hide. Jin Konzi looked ahead in shock at the two people. He quickly hid. "I'll tell you how much these pills cost." He slowly listed the prices. Jin Konzi was instantly shocked. "That's way too expensive. Even if I sold everything I own, I could only buy 4 bottles. So there's only one solution for now, and that's spiritual medicine. But the ones I know are all very expensive." At this moment, the Sword Emperor grins wickedly. "Come a little closer." The two began to plot how to become stronger. The Sword Emperor then started to say, "Now you urgently need a spirit herb that greatly enhances your physical abilities. Or maybe some martial arts secrets or something. But you're too weak right now. Even if I give you a martial arts manual, you wouldn't be able to fully grasp it." Jin Konzi reminded the person in charge to hide their identity as a winner. The old man couldn't help but exclaim, "You are really cautious, esteemed guest. Ha ha ha. The world has indeed declined recently. One must still be on guard. After leaving the Merchant Association, sooner or later, you'll become a thorn in the side of the major guilds. No matter how strong you are, you might be poisoned or ambushed one day. So, developing quietly is the wisest choice. Finally, when leaving, you're quite smart. With the protection of the Merchant Guild title, your path ahead will be much smoother. That's only natural. If you're like Yendi, a lone wolf." So he walked into the room. He touched the gold. Then he told the person in charge to deposit all this money into the vault. "By the way, by a secondary honorary member of your business association. The position is truly impressive." They arrived at the entrance of the VIP reception room. Just as the door opened, Jin Konzi was stunned by what he saw. "So much gold. How should I spend it?" After confirming the winning numbers were correct, the young man hurriedly went to inform the manager. Then a middle-aged man came over and invited Jin Konzi upstairs. Excited, Jin Konzi adjusted his collar and followed him. At this moment, the young cat guy opened the ticket and took a look at it. He was stunned. "You actually won the grand prize." Hearing that someone won the grand prize, the crowd quickly gathered around. The catman in front of him directly said, "Hello, sir, are you sure about the purchase date? Lottery tickets purchased over 2 years ago cannot be redeemed." Jin Konzi smiled faintly and said, I just bought this last week. Maybe I didn't store it properly. Everyone calls him the Count. He is the only one in the tower who has the ability to exchange goods with the outside world, and it is precisely because of this powerful skill that Zhang monopolizes all the economy within the tower. Just when Jean Konzi was about to redeem the lottery for a grand prize and return to 10 years ago, bought a lottery ticket and won the 888.8 billion super jackpot. Turns out Golden Confucius really exists. There is a guild in this world called Shanglian. The union president is the third-ranked hunter. Let me help you with that. I will make you surpass him, reaching heights no hunter has ever achieved. This guy, in order to become a billionaire, ruthlessly committed suicide 5,000 times at home. And that ability is something no one can compare to. You're really something, kid. You're so interesting. Since you've already copied the old man's strategy, then there must be another kind of person by his side. I'm curious to see which one of you will become the strongest hunter. After more than 4,000 suicide returns, he's completely unafraid of any death now. Jian Di explained that everyone can awaken their talents during their growth. In this situation, the most admirable thing is overcoming the fear of death. Jian Di immediately refuted me. I don't think so. I think you have great potential. You have a fearless spirit. Most people tend to be cautious in battle. But Jean Confucius is nothing like that, just as I expected. At this moment, the red-haired man admired Jean Kongzi very much. I'm completely a weakling when it comes to fighting. I have no talent at all. I might disappoint you. Kill a few shapeshifting monsters and let's see. Then Jean Kongzi slashed twice. A huge slime was chopped into pieces by him. The red-haired man looked at the protagonist. Decisive action. He then asked the young man, "Do you want to become stronger? If you do, show me your strength." The two then went to the first floor of the giant tower. The red-haired man let him test his skills. Hearing Jean Confucius' explanation, the red-haired man understood immediately. He then told him to stand up. Afterwards, he carefully observed him up close. He said this should be a good seed. It turns out the sword saint saw through how many people you had killed, and the 4091 displayed above his head means that he's a murderer who killed over 4,000 people. But in reality, he only killed the Flame Emperor. The others were just paper kills. But Jean Konzi said it was because the sword saint killed him, so there was no way to send him back. The red-haired man was confused. The old man is a good person. Why would he kill you? The red-haired guy was shocked. What are you saying? Give me back to that old man right now. The red-haired man started wailing like a banshee in the room. He kept insisting that no matter what, he had to go back. In the end, with the last wish, he became the mastermind. Isn't this the legendary Golden Finger? Jean Konzi broke into a cold sweat. This guy came in such a bizarre way, and Jean Konzi claimed he copied himself over. Jean Confucius immediately opened the skill window. The skill description said this person is from another world. In his world, he conquered the first 99 floors of the tower, but he ultimately failed to clear the 100th floor. The old man you're talking about is the Sword Saint, right? He's just a novice. Calling him a sword saint feels a bit exaggerated to me. Jean Confucius was shocked inside. He actually called the sword saint a beginner, and this skill has now been secretly copied by the male lead. At this moment, a confused Jean Konzi locked eyes with the red-haired man. The atmosphere was incredibly awkward. The man looked at Jean Konzi curiously, surprised that he could see him. Where did that old man Marcus go? Just as Jean Konzi was curious about the skill's effect, he suddenly heard someone speaking beside him. Jean Konzi instantly turned his head. Who are you? That handsome old man? He actually became the world's strongest sword saint with a trash skill. Praying in his heart, give me a combat type skill. As the skill cards were chosen, the time returned to 24 hours ago. He quickly got up and opened the status bar. As a result, it was another passive skill, Sword Point Constellation. Looking at the cards in front of him, they were all ordinary silver and bronze skill cards. There wasn't a single golden S-rank skill. This made Kim Konzi feel disappointed. So, he randomly grabbed a silver card. His head and body were instantly separated. As he watched the old man walk away, the world plunged into darkness. Ding dong, as the system notification sounded. Kim Konzi arrived at the place for random skill selection. So, he planned to steal the Sword Master's skill. He started greeting the Sword Master's family one by one. How are your children and grandchildren? I heard your granddaughter is. Before he could finish, the Swordmaster slashed down with a single stroke. Suddenly, a voice next to him stopped him. It told him to spare this poor person just this once. Confucius witnessed this bizarre scene. He felt that the Sword Saint was definitely not mentally ill. This might be a special skill of his. Fortunately, he reacted in time and retreated to hide. He narrowly avoided this disaster, but the next second, he accidentally stepped on a stone and fell to the ground. The sword saint raised his long sword, ready to deliver a fatal blow. It's completely over now. I can't explain it clearly. Jin Konzi immediately turned to flee desperately, but the sword saint didn't give him a chance to escape. He aimed a lethal sword strike at his throat. It's clearly showing 4091 above your head. I can see it very clearly. At this moment, Jin Konzi realized a horrifying truth. In order to return to the past, he killed himself 4090 times. It was because he killed the Flame Emperor that this misunderstanding occurred. He hurriedly explained that the person he killed deserved to die. However, the sword saint interrupted him halfway. What do you mean, deserved to die? Everything you're saying is a lie. He's just an ordinary person. The sword saint drew his sword and pointed it at Jin Confucius, saying he had many strategies. One of them was being able to see how many people the other person had killed. With that said, everything became clear. Exposing yourself on purpose and then approaching me, as expected of a top assassin. Jin Confucius was dumbfounded when he heard this. He quickly explained that he wasn't some top-tier assassin. The young Jin Konzi panicked instantly. My position was exposed right away. The sword saint looked at Jin Konzi behind the tree. Is there a reason you're doing such a creepy stalking? Then he drew his sword. Do you still plan to keep pretending? At that moment, just thinking about replicating the skills of the strongest of this era, the sword saint made his heart race with excitement. But as he followed, the sword saint suddenly stopped. He spoke. Don't be in such a rush to come out. He quickly caught up with him. They left the tavern. Jin Konzi immediately started searching for the sword saint's figure in the street. After looking around, he saw the old man's back at the end of the crowd. He'll smash their kidneys in an instant. At that moment, the old man muttered to himself and got up to leave. The crowd in the tavern immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Jin Confucius followed closely behind. So, he began searching for ways to provoke the swordmaster. He started browsing forums on his phone. To his surprise, there was a guide detailing things not to say in front of the swordmaster. He was shocked to find out that the old man's taboo was his grandchildren. As soon as someone mentions the sword saint in front of him, he hopes that if the sword saint is killed, he will have even more twisted skills. Suddenly, the swordmaster roared angrily, "Shut up! Stop arguing!" Jin Konzi's thoughts were immediately interrupted. He had no idea what was going on with him. Could it be some kind of mental issue? As a result, he successfully killed his enemy. But now he has set his sights on the sword saint. At this moment, Jin Konzi is sitting in a bar, watching a tough-looking uncle in a suit and sneakers walk in. This uncle is the sword saint, ranked first on the hunter leaderboard. I will become the one among you and the returners. Every time I am killed by an enemy, I can return to 24 hours before, and he can randomly obtain one of the opponent's skills for his own use. In order to take revenge on the world's #1 hunter, he committed suicide over 4,000 times. He returned to 11 years ago and directly killed the Flame Emperor, who had not yet awakened his talent, in the cradle. And all of this relied on these two cheat-level skills in front of me. A tough man in a suit and sneakers opened the door and walked in. Jin Konzi was stunned the moment he saw him. Could this man be the #1 sword saint on the rankings? This man returns to the previous state every time he dies. Is it all over? Time had swiftly moved to the evening. He came to the tavern, ready to drink to his heart's content, saying goodbye to the world of the past. Just as he was thinking about how to get rich with this ability in the future, looking at the wolves drooling. Then I'll let you have this guy for dinner. So Confucius changed his clothes and prepared to leave. He headed for the first level of the tower. He looked at the calm street. He quietly looked at the corpse on the ground. What a load of crap. World's #1 hunter, pretending to be so noble and righteous, yet still killing innocent bystanders like me. At this moment, a group of compatriots appeared behind him. Confucius did not leave any future troubles. He rushed up again to deliver the finishing blow, and stabbed straight into the Flame Emperor's head. After venting his anger, Jin Konzi calmed down. Taking advantage of the Flame Emperor's pain, he immediately pulled out a dagger, and swiftly cut the Flame Emperor's throat. The Flame Emperor collapsed to the ground, bleeding profusely, unable to make any sound, pulled out a poisoned sword, and was about to throw it back at Jin Konzi. But the next second, he suddenly crouched, dodging the fatal blow. He simply lifted his knee. He kicked the Flame Emperor, sending him into chaos. Yen Di grabbed his head and mocked, "I'll reluctantly accept this money." How familiar this historic scene is. It was the final moment of the day I was killed. In the end, Jin Konzi never got the key. At that moment, Yen Di turned around, but all the money on him. Then the Flame Emperor grabbed Jin Konzi's collar, snatched the wallet away, and pushed the pleading Jin Konzi down, looking at the scattered more than 60 gold coins in the wallet. I'm not a charity. Jean Konzi immediately offered 20 gold coins. Let him hurry up and get the medicine for himself. However, he misunderstood the meaning of the Flame Emperor. What he wanted was not just a few gold coins. The Flame Emperor curses his bad luck. It seems today's hunt is a bust. Jean Konzi begs the Flame Emperor for some medicine to save himself. However, he just held a fur up to Jean Konzi, saying that his hunt today is ruined. How can I give you such an expensive potion for free? After that, Jean Konzi applied the red liquid of the shape-shifting monster. He is ready to start his hunting plan. After Yen Emperor teleported to the 6th floor of the tower, he leisurely strolled around. Just happened to catch the male lead in a dress being attacked by a pack of wolves. However, after several days of observing in the shadows, Jean Konzi has figured out his daily routine. Every day he gets up around noon. Then in the afternoon, he goes to the 2nd floor of the giant tower to farm some slimes. But today will be the last time he farms monsters in his life. But just thinking about this made Jean Konzi tremble all over. Why does he have to kill me? Since this grudge has been formed, then he should wait for my revenge. He observed the Flame Emperor's life, recalling the details of his own murder. In an instant, he realized many things. It turns out the reason the Flame Emperor wants to kill the Saintess is because he returned to the previous day after being poisoned by her. Moreover, each time he uses a dagger to cut down his means. It is extremely cruel. This time, he will definitely not let the Flame Emperor grow up. He must be strangled in the cradle. Then, Jean Konzi found the residence of the Flame Emperor. As long as this man dies, he will return to the day before his death, and he can randomly copy a talent from his killer. All because he seeks revenge against the world's top hunter, the Flame Emperor. And so, he committed suicide 4,500 times. Exhausted, he floated against the wall. And after resting for a moment, he got dressed and left. This time, he is determined to kill the Flame Emperor in the cradle. Playing the honest man. How terrifying it must be to fail at suicide. Jean Konzi felt it was all worth it. As time continued to reverse day by day, Jean Konzi's death count reached 4,049. Finally, after the last suicide, he returned to the day when the Flame Emperor's power awakened, which is 4,050 days ago. So, in order to return to the time before Yen Di's awakening, he activated the suicide mode. The repeated deaths caused his mind great torment, but the moment he thought of the despicable face of the Flame Emperor, suddenly he recalled a past TV interview, where Yen Di talked about the day he first awakened his powers, and this moment was deeply engraved in Jean Konzi's mind. It was precisely June 7th, 11 years ago. He didn't want to live his whole life in the shadow of the Flame Emperor. He thought about his current abilities. He prepared to use his abilities to kill the Flame Emperor. Because the Flame Emperor also had the ability to reset time, he began to think about how to kill someone who could resurrect infinitely. Isn't this basically activating a cheat mode for invincibility? But Jean Konzi is still consumed by the fear of being killed. He starts drinking every day to drown his sorrows, living in a daze. After getting out of bed, he knelt on the ground and cried loudly. This skill can actually allow him to reset the world infinitely. To put it simply, as long as he is killed, time will rewind to 24 hours earlier. He can even randomly acquire one of his opponent's skills. He was horrified to find himself resurrected at home, and it was the day before his death. He quickly opened the skill cards to check, and when he saw the new skill, he was stunned. Accompanied by the prompt to select a skill card, Jean Confucius stumbled forward and reached out a hand. This time, he got the golden card again. After a flash of bright light, Golden Konzi suddenly opened his eyes as the Flame Emperor issued his fire. Jean Confucius still died beneath the flames of the Flame Emperor, but his life did not truly come to an end, because Jean Confucius' passive skill had successfully activated. He began to randomly copy one of the Flame Emperor's skills, so she did not resist. Amidst waves of painful screams, Jean Confucius watched helplessly as the saint perished in the flames, and he himself was forced down by the Flame Emperor. A mix of grief and anger, but the Flame Emperor quickly grabbed her by the throat. Jean Confucius watched as the beautiful saint was tortured by the Flame Emperor. Hiding in the back, he could only resent his own powerlessness. He didn't even dare to breathe heavily. The saint also knew well that she was no match for the Flame Emperor. Miss Holy Maiden, I already noticed you poisoned my drink. If it weren't for my skills, I might have really died at your hands, you bitch. At this point, the Holy Maiden still tried to resist. Just when he thought he was about to rise to power, he discovered the Flame Emperor was talking to a woman in an alley. Confucius slowly approached. He discovered that this woman was actually the Holy Maiden of the Black Dragon Guild. The Flame Emperor scoffed and said, "Stop pretending." Just to go back to the man who killed Emperor Yen 12 years ago, it turns out he gained the favor of the gods due to his anger and jealousy, and was granted a unique SSS level skill. The skill activates when he is killed, and he can randomly obtain one of the opponent's skills for himself.